All right, well, let's get started then. Welcome everybody to the second call for Parris here. We had some amazing feedback last week, and I think this week's going to be even better. Before we go over the ground rules, Parris wants to cover a few things. So over to you, Parris.
Well, last week I started by thanking everybody that promoted, and just as I predicted, I forgot to mention somebody. So I would be remiss if I didn't thank my good friend Doberman Dan Gallipu, who also promoted this event. So thank you, Dan. Also, when we were talking about the best book on persuasion, I was blanking. I knew there were a lot of books on persuasion that I really dig, and I was just coming up blank, and I went to the go-to, which is Cialdini, which is a great book. And it's in my list of, the first 12 books you should read. But I would be remiss if I did not mention Dave Lakhani, who may be an attendee, but I don't know if he's attending here live or not, but he did donate. And he's written some terrific books on persuasion. Dave Lakhani has a very interesting backstory. He actually grew up in a cult when he was a kid. And so he kind of knows firsthand what it's like to be in that, and they use their persuasion skills to get people into the cult or to stay in the cult, but we can use them for good. So anyway, back to you, Russ.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen here. We'll go over a few quick ground rules. They'll probably look familiar. This is live training call again with Parris, call number 2. The ground rules are pretty simple. All attendees are in listen-only mode, so only the Cubs and Parris are able to speak and be on camera. So if you have a question, please place those questions in the Q&A box only. The questions in the chat will not be answered. So as we go through, we'll sort out the questions in the Q&A box, and if we can answer some ahead of time, we will. The ones that make sense for Parris to answer, we'll ask him to do so when he has time. So all questions in the Q&A box, and this call will be recorded. A link to the recording will be sent as soon as it's up. And if Parris has any documents or anything that he wants to send along, those will be sent as well. Well, that's it. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Parris.
Thank you. So last week we covered a bunch of tactics. We covered the 5-word phrase that you can write on a piece of paper to come up with hooks and ideas, and that is, what is this similar to? We covered the 3-step persuasion formula for getting people to believe unbelievable claims, which is you start with a story, you segue into a reason why explanation, and then you segue from that into the hard data, the studies, the facts, figures, and so forth. We covered the headline steroids, which is proof stacking. We covered Jerry Spence's secret for persuading judges and juries, which is to speak in actions, not abstractions. And when you do that, your copy is going to be more full of life, and you're going to get more juice into your copy, even if you're not the most exciting person in the world. And Pauline, what question do we ask ourselves to get us to speak in actions, not abstractions?
If I was watching a movie, what would this look like?
If I was watching a movie of this, what would I be seeing? And then finally, we covered the idea of persuading people to grasp the advantage, which is the benefit of the benefit. And sometimes you can actually get to that by doing the what is this similar to technique. But you can also do it by taking numbers and translating them into something that's concrete. Because again, numbers are actions. We're turning them abstractions. We're turning them into actions. There's a whole lot of way to get people to grasp the advantage. And once you learn this stuff, you'll be seeing it everywhere. You know, it was previously invisible. It's like when you buy a new car, right? Let's say you bought yourself a BMW, and now all of a sudden you're on the highway and you're noticing BMWs everywhere. You never noticed them before. Same with this stuff. You know, watch the videos again if you like, get it down, and you'll start seeing it everywhere. You'll start using it, and the more you practice, the better you'll get. So today what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of copy and we're going to go through it, and you're going to see how the copywriter, who is Shinfun, who is on the call, Where is he? There he is. He's muted and he doesn't want to show his face. He's a very humble guy. Doesn't want to show himself. But excuse me. We're going to go through a piece of copy he wrote because I want to show you that, you know, I didn't write this copy. One of my Cubs wrote this copy. They took what I taught them and they put it to use, and you can too. People sometimes ask me, Parris, why are you showing us all these examples from like 10 and 15 and 20 years ago? And I'll tell you why. There's actually two reasons why. One reason is because I want you to realize that there are some principles that are timeless, okay? So there's two sets of things going on. There's the timeless stuff that's always going to be true, and then there's the fashions and fads and what's new technologically and what new media are being used, you know, social media and what have you. And that's all well and good, and you should keep up on all that stuff, but you really need to be grounded in the fundamentals, the stuff that will be the same, always will be the same. You guys ever heard of a guy named Jeff Bezos?
Yeah.
Kind of heard of him, right? Richest man in the world. People think of Amazon as a technology company, and Amazon does use a lot of technology. They're at the leading edge of technology. But Jeff Bezos' whole vision when he started the company is he asked himself, what doesn't change? What's going to be the same 20, 50, 100, 2 years from now? And the answer he's came up is people are going to want selection, they're going to want convenience, they're going to want good pricing, they're going to want instant gratification. That's never going to change. So that's what he built his business around. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Any comments in there? Melanie, can you check the comments and see if there's anything about?
We're doing good. Clean and clear.
Can we check the questions and see if there are any questions so far?
We are clean and clear on questions.
Yeah, clean and clear. Okay. So I started telling you about how I'm going to share my screen now, right? I started telling you about where the heck's the share screen button? Here it is. All right. Okay, you guys seeing my screen right now, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I've been showing you old copy. Today I'm going to show you a piece of copy that's actually running right now. Okay. We have it. Of course. Of course. Come on. Let's try this. All right, here we go. This is running as a video sales letter, but of course, I'm not going to sit there and go slide by slide through a video sales letter that takes, you know, over a half hour to watch. This is the transcript version, if you will. You know, if you try to X out of the video, it brings you to this. Okay, so look at the headline. 3 Nobel Prize winning breakthroughs that work together to make memory problems a thing of the past. Is that a big claim, Nicole?
Oh, sorry, Parris. I was reading the chat. You caught me. What was the question?
Who played third base for the 1927 New York Yankees?
No idea. And I can see Brian Kurtz was posting a bogus question, and I fell for it.
Was it who's on first?
The answer is Jumping Joe Dugan is the third baseman.
Oh.
Now I have another question for you, Nicole. This headline here, 3 Nobel Prize winning breakthroughs that work together to make memory problems a thing of the past. Is that a big claim?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that something people want?
Absolutely.
Right. They want to make their memory problems a thing of the past. Okay. Do we have proof equal to the claim here?
I would say
Absolutely.
we do.
Right. We have 3 Nobel Prize winning breakthroughs. Oh, and by the way, let me just backtrack a second. There's 2 reasons why I don't usually show new samples, current samples of my stuff. Number one is because what I said earlier about wanting things that are timeless. Number two is people rip your shit off, right? As soon as you show one of your things, everybody gets out of the woodwork and they start ripping it off and swiping it and all that kind of stuff, okay? And as I told you last week, not a good strategy. Because if you're just swiping each other's stuff, you're just cannibalizing each other, and everybody just gets mediocre results, right? It's like incest. People become stupider a generation later, okay? Don't just swipe this, okay? If I find one of you guys like wholesale swiping this, I'm gonna hunt you down like a dog, okay? So anyway, Nobel Prize is a great proof element, and whenever we've used it, we've gotten good results. But again, I'm not just gonna swipe every other headline we've done that says Nobel Prize winning breakthroughs. Now, in this case, what Shinfun found is that there were not one, not two, but 3 different Nobel Prize winning breakthroughs that were involved in this product. And so that became the headline. And so it's like bigger than it was, right? We took something and we added something else to it and made it bigger. And so this thing is kicking butt, okay? Now, does that mean you should always just take, well, one thing and add 2 more and make it 3? No, it does not. Because if you do that, you're just kind of, very often what you're doing when you do that is it's just, did you ever see that movie, Something About Mary? Type in the chat box if you've ever seen Something About Mary. Melanie, what are people saying?
I'm seeing a whole bunch of yeses.
A whole bunch of yeses. Okay. Remember when Ben Stiller's in the car with that dude before they go to that rest area and have that whole fiasco? And remember that product, 8-minute abs, you guys? It was commercials. And the guy had the great idea. I'm going to do 7-minute abs, right? And I'll be rich because that guy did 8-minute ads. Mine's better. Mine's 7-minute ads, right? Now, that got a lot of laughs at the movie theater. Why did that get laughs? Nobody?
Yeah, it's what we see all the time.
It's just like this incremental improvement. It's just ripping off something. You're not really adding any value. You're not bringing anything to the table. I'll give you another example. Type in the chat box if you've ever seen the movie This is Spinal Tap. What are they saying?
Oh, a whole bunch of yeses.
Whole bunch of messes. Drew, have you seen it?
No.
Okay. Paul, have you seen it?
Yeah, years ago.
All right. What's the famous scene where he's showing his guitar collection and he shows him the amp?
Oh, boy, I don't remember Paris.
Look at the chat if you need a hint.
Oh,
Goes up to
okay.
11.
Is that the goes to 11? Okay, yeah.
That's right. All the other amps go to 10. This goes to 11. Right? So we have this little shortcut, my client and I, when we're critiquing copy, I'll look at somebody's copy and I'll go, yeah, he's doing a this goes to 11 here. Okay. You don't want to be the guy doing a this goes to 11. Okay. You want to be the guy taking one thing and another thing and combining them and making something new. Right. So you take it. Remember we said last week about ideas having sex, right?
Yep.
You take the jukebox and the Sony Walkman and you put them together and you get an iPod. You take the iPod and your phone and you put them together and you get an iPhone. You take an iPhone and you make it bigger and you get an iPad, okay? Now you're creating a synergy. You're building things that add value, okay? And that's where the great hooks come from, right? Like if you listen to the Kevin Rogers interview where I saw this joke in the National Enquirer that said, if there's a nuclear holocaust, the only things that will survive are cockroaches and Cher, the singer, right? Little joke, right? And it just stuck in my head. And then one day I was reading about Warren Buffett, how he likes to invest in companies that will survive, AKA what we were talking a moment ago about Jeff Bezos, what's never going to change, right? People are always going to drink Coca-Cola, so you invest in Coca-Cola. So I said, ooh, I'll call it cockroach stocks. Like cockroaches can withstand nuclear holocaust, so can these stocks. So that became my headline. Never before revealed, Warren Buffett's cockroach strategy for getting rich in the market, okay? You guys hear me? Everybody?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any questions on that, Melanie?
Let me just check. Not on that topic, no.
Okay, so here we got 3 Nobel Prize winning breakthroughs that work together to make memory problems a thing of the past. Very powerful proof element. And then the subhead is a standard if then. If you suffer from memory problems, this may be the most exciting news you read this year. And then the opening copy, Paul, why don't you read us the first 1, 2, 3 paragraphs?
You got it. Not long ago, Rita Levi Montalcini celebrated her 103rd birthday. During the festivities, she made a speech. And in that speech, she said, "My mental capacity is greater today than when I was 20. Normally, when I read a story like this, I smile and I say, God bless her, and then I turn the page. But in this case, I took Rita's comments very seriously, and so did the rest of the medical world. You see, Rita was no ordinary senior citizen. She was a famous doctor who devoted her life to studying the human brain. In fact, her brain discoveries were so important that they earned her the Nobel Prize in medicine."
Bam, right? So it starts out with this cute little story about this old lady celebrating her 103rd birthday. Okay, so right away, by starting with the story, we get people right into the action, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we say during the festivities, she made a speech. So you could kind of picture that, right? That's a word picture.
Mhm.
And in that speech, she said, "My mental capacity is greater today when I was 20. Now, the first time you heard that, what did you think, Paul?
Well, it's interesting, you know, it's like, okay, but it's maybe slightly unbelievable.
Yeah, so it's interesting, but it's like, I'm not buying it. So again, I'm anticipating, or Shin is anticipating the objection right at the moment it occurs to you. So what's the next sentence?
Normally, when I read a story like this, I smile and I say, God bless her, and then I turn the page. But in this
Okay.
case, I took Rita's comments very seriously, and so did the rest of the medical world.
Right. So normally I read it. Oh, me too. I do the same thing. I say, God bless her, and I turn the page. But in this case, I took Rita's comment so did the rest of the medical world. Really? Why would that be? You see how I've got an open loop here. I've created a curiosity provoking statement. Joe Sugarman calls them seeds of curiosity. You end your paragraphs with one of those to keep the reader reading. You see, Rita was no ordinary citizen. She was a famous doctor who devoted her life to studying the human brain. Oh, wow, that's pretty cool. So she's not just blowing smoke. She knows what she's talking about. And then the next sentence is like the punchline. In fact, her brain discoveries were so important that they earned her the Nobel Prize in medicine. Now you've got them, right? I mean, who's going to not want to read more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then we got a crosshead, a discovery that's changing the world. And it says, Dr. Levi Montalcini won the Nobel Prize for discovering a protein called nerve growth factor, NGF. Since her discovery, hundreds of studies have been done on NGF. These studies show that NGF has a whole host of benefits, okay? It reverses age-related memory loss and cognitive decline. It helps with the survival and maintenance of brain cells. It protects and repairs damaged brain cells, okay? So we're talking about 3 different proof elements. This is the reason why explanation for why this nerve growth factor is gonna help you have better memory and stuff, right? But if you look at these are a little bit abstract. The first one is definitely abstract, right? The second one is a little better because you can kind of picture brain cells. But then this one is a little more because it repairs damaged brain cells, but they're still a little abstract. So right away, we make sure to come right back to a word picture. It prevents your brain from shrinking as you get older because you can picture brain shrinking, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we did the story into the reason why explanation, and now we're going into the studies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one study showed it worked even for patients who had severe brain shrinkage. Okay, now you can picture severe brain shrinkage. In the study, Scientists first had the patients take MRI scans, which showed that their brains had shrunk significantly, right? So you can picture this. It's a story, it's a word picture, it's an action. You can picture scientists, you can picture people taking MRI scans, can you not?
Mhm.
Mm.
And the scans showed that the brains had shrunk, so you can picture that too, right?
Yeah.
They then implanted capsules that release NGF into the patient's bodies. So you could picture that. You can picture them implanting capsules, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
After 12 months, they had the patients take an MRI again. You could picture that, right?
Yeah.
What they found amazed them. They found that NGF was able to block and significantly slow down the brain shrinkage. Okay? So, pretty impressive, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, look what we've done. I said you lead with a story and then you go into the reason why and then you do the studies. Well, guess what? The studies themselves are presented as stories,
Mhm.
right? So most people, B and C level people would say one study found that it does this, and it'll say some abstract thing and it'll say that's all it'll say. Whenever possible, you want to try to phrase your studies as stories. Now, to do that, you're usually going to have to get research because the stuff that the client gives you is very often going to be kind of dry, like what I just said. So very often what you need to do is you need to go out and get the actual study and turn to the part where it says methodology or how they conducted the study, wade through the medicalese, right? I used to sit there with a medical dictionary in my left hand and the study in my right hand, and every third or fourth word, I'd stop what I'm doing, look up what it means, keep going back and forth till I could translate the damn thing into English. But guess what? That's where the story is, because that's how they tell you what you did. That's how you
Parris?
know. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just wonder, is it possible to make your screen a little bigger? Some people are saying it's a little hard to see.
Okay, so how's that? Oh, that's much better, right?
Yeah, thank you.
You guys cool? Type in the chat box if that's good. What are they saying, Mel?
Better. Yep. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Should I do it more? Let's try more. Let's see what happens.
Let's go crazy.
Is that too big?
Ah,
So much better.
ta-da.
Yeah.
That's better?
Yep.
All right. So after 12 months, they took the MRI again and all this amazing stuff, right? And now we go to the crosshead, a simple way to boost NGF. So we're doing this sort of structure of, there's a belief, a series of things they need to believe before they buy your product, right? So first we had to tell them that there's this Nobel Prize study called NGF. Then we had to prove to them that NGF does indeed boost your brain. And so now we go to the next thing, which is a simple way to boost NGF. Now, why does it say simple way there, Paul?
Well, we've just talked about having, this capsule implanted, right? So people aren't going to want to do that. So it answers that objection as it springs into their head. I have another quick question for you, Parris. When you've written here, what they found amazed them, that's a way of getting the reader to grasp the advantage, right, of that study.
It is. Well, it does two things. Number one, it gets people to grasp the advantage because what it's telling you, what I'm about to tell you is really amazing, just in case they didn't realize. The other thing it does is when I have sentences like that, what they found amazing, that's a seed of curiosity. Like, well, now you got to read the sentence to find out what they found, right?
Cool.
Okay. So you said they have an objection, and right here, Shin answers the objection. Obviously, you wouldn't want to constantly go to the hospital to have a capsule implanted in you. That's why scientists were hoping to find an easier way to boost NGF levels. So they pored over the medical literature and examined hundreds of nutrients shown to support brain health. After carefully analyzing all the nutrients, they shortlisted 33 that looked most promising. They then tested those nutrients against each other. And they found that one nutrient that stood head and shoulders above all the others at raising NGF levels. Okay? Now, this is a gambit that you can use in your copy. Okay? I've done it in financial copy, like if it's a systems package that talks about how the guru picks the investments. well, we start with the universe of stocks and we eliminate everything that doesn't have this, this, and that. And now that we have this list, we look for stocks that have that are growing at more than X% a year in earnings, and they're this and that. And then we keep narrowing it down till we come down to the creme de la creme. And those are the only investments we recommend. And I wouldn't recommend anything unless I would recommend it to my own grandmother and all that kind of stuff. You guys get it?
Mm-hmm.
What are they saying in the chats, Melanie?
The chat is mayhem, but do you want to answer some questions?
Okay, it's mayhem. All right. Yeah, I'll answer some questions. Yeah.
Okay, great. This is Shiomi. Gene Schwartz says incremental promise actually works in the first stages of awareness, doesn't he?
Well, stage one awareness is when they know your product and know they want it. So that would be like a headline that says iPhone $300. You don't need to sell it. They already know they want the iPhone. You just tell them what the offer is.
Okay.
Is he talking about stage one sophistication, maybe?
Unclear. It says first stages of awareness.
Okay. Incremental promise is a way to take, you don't want to make a promise that's too big that they're going to reject out of hand. Okay. So this is a pretty big promise and it's pretty unbelievable. If I didn't have this in there, the headline would flop, right? Because it's just not believable. And notice I'm leading like I did yesterday on that make back every dollar you lost in the stock market. If you look at that, I led with the proof and then went into the claim, and I do the same thing here. Because this is a latter stage sophistication. People have heard things about improving their memory 100 times, right? Are there more questions?
Yeah, we've got a few in here. When
Yep.
do you know the curiosity element in the headline is relevant and not just blind curiosity? For example, your cockroach stocks. Why did you feel that curiosity would stimulate the reader?
Well, curiosity is a human, it's human nature. We're all curious people. If we weren't, we wouldn't have survived. As to when you would know, you got to understand your audience, right? The single most important thing about copywriting, you can know every rule in the world, copywriting rule, but if you don't understand your audience, you're dead in the water. Conversely, if you know your audience really well, you could be sort of fall down on a few things, but still do a good job.
All right, next. This was from Steve. My normal habit is to replace phrases like, in quotes, not long ago, that can seem overly vague and replace them with detailed phrases like, on a balmy Sunday afternoon in August, or something similar, assuming it's true. Any reason this wouldn't be an appropriate edit?
Okay. I'm not a big fan of not long ago either. The reason we used it here is because it wasn't all that recent that this happened, and she's since passed away. But we wanted to make it seem like it was recent, but if I said recently, it's not really true, so we changed it to not long ago.
Okay. So it's
as far as his openings, read those again. On a balmy Sunday afternoon, or
on a balmy Sunday afternoon in August.
So that stuff's okay, but I will caution you to be careful of not having your writing sound artificial. Like, as much as possible, you want to write the way that you talk. So if you were sitting at the bar over a beer with your buddy and you wanted to tell him about this thing you're selling, would you say to him, hey, Frank, on a balmy day.
It was balmy. Nobody says that. In case anybody's curious, nobody says that.
Yeah. So, that's my caveat with that one.
Next.
I'm not saying that you can never make it work, but be careful about stuff like that. Don't go into writer mode. Just write the way you talk.
Jonathan says, wouldn't it be more powerful to say, in quotes, more than 550 studies have shown, instead of hundreds of studies, which just sounds like gobs?
Right. So if I had the actual number like that, I would have used it. Right. So some of you may have heard me say, whenever you're writing something, you ask yourself, does it hurt my case help my case, hurt my case, or is it neutral, right? And if there were only 12 studies, well, you don't mention that, right? Whereas if there were hundreds of studies, you do mention that. And in this case, there were hundreds of studies, but I don't know how many hundreds, so I can't quantify it. If I could, I would. If I had an exact number, specificity is better than vague.
This one's from Nick. He says, so you'd say it's okay to have two abstract sentences if they are followed by a word picture sentence?
I'd rather have no abstract sentences. If I had a way to say that better, I would have. But you know, yeah, if you got two in a row, you're starting to get into, give me one more abstract sentence, and you're gonna lose me, right? So yeah.
This one's from Richard. Is Parris finding research online and using that as the basis of the article to sell luteolin or whatever is being sold?
We find research everywhere. So typically you ask the client for a start kit with all the research, and you go through it, and sometimes you have to go find your own if what they gave you isn't good enough.
Okay, this one's kind of long, so I haven't pre-read it. Here we go. This one's Leonardo. He says, not only that, but when you say, in quotes, what they found amazed them, as you're talking about authorities and scientists,
right?
The prospect convinces himself that he has to be amazed too, because he doesn't want to be different from smart people. He wants to feel like he's part of that group. I don't think that's a question. I just think it's a very long comment.
No, it's a very good comment. I'm glad you brought that up, Leonardo.
Great.
Thank you.
Next one. This copy seems very long. Is it because the audience has requested it? Could you have written a shorter sales letter?
I'm going to go into this again. You know, everybody says, oh, the copy's too long, you know, but every time we test, the longer copy outperforms the shorter copy. The more you tell, the more you sell. It's an old cliche in the business. The more you tell, the more you sell. I'm going to suggest to you that there is no such thing as copy that's too long. There is only such a thing as copy that's too boring.
This one is from...
Yeah.
This one's from Maurice. He says, is it really a Nobel Prize winning?
I wasn't done with my...
You're still talking, but I want to talk now. Okay, you go. You talk.
I want to really get people to get this, because some people have a hard time with this, okay?
Okay.
The more you tell, the more you sell. There's no such thing as too long. There's only such a thing as too boring. If it's boring, then even 2 paragraphs is too long, okay?
Exactly.
If it's exciting and interesting and captivating, they will read it. You know, everybody says, oh, well, maybe that worked in the past, Parris, but people have short attention spans today. That's right. People do have short attention spans today. But let me ask you this. Type in the comment box. How long is the average movie? If you go to the movies to watch one of these Marvel blockbusters, how long is that movie?
2 hours, 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours plus. Some of them are 3 hours long, okay?
Yeah.
How long was the average movie 20 years ago? 1.5 hours.
Yep, that's what they're saying, 90 minutes.
If people's attention spans are getting shorter, why are movies getting longer? People will watch if it's interesting, captivating, and riveting. Let me tell you about the first video sales letter I ever did. We had a Magalog, and we just took it and put the words on a static web page like this, and it was doing well. And then we converted it into a video sales letter, and I think we increased 117%, I think is what the lift we got from it, because video sales letters were new back then. But here's the thing. That video was 1 hour and 20 minutes long of just words on a frickin' PowerPoint on a screen with a narrator. It was my first video letter, so I didn't know any better. So I didn't put the buy button until the very end of the video. Guess what? People sat and watched the whole thing because the copy was interesting. It was captivating. It spoke in actions instead of abstractions. It had tight transitions from one sentence to the other. It had seeds of curiosity and open loops to keep people reading. It got people to grasp the advantage. It talked about things that's of interest to them, and they watched the whole thing. Now, you know, you usually get a better conversion if you put the buy button sooner, because some people are ready to buy right away and other people take more convincing. So, you know, there you go. But I hope I've convinced you that long copy works.
All right. Maurice says, is it really a Nobel Prize winning ...
Yes. We don't make shit up. I said that last week. Don't make shit up. Everything you put in your copy has to be true.
How do you use or quote scientific research to write FTC compliant copy?
Well, FTC is truth in advertising. So everything you say has to be true, and you have to have the studies and you have to show the studies. And it can't, your proof can't be like, you know, what's his name? Mike, what's his name? The health ranger? What's that guy's name? Nobody?
Oh.
No.
All right. Well, you can't just have some dude's website as your proof. It has to be an actual published scientific study.
Mike Adams. Oh, Adams. Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
everyone's
Mike
saying.
Adams. Right. Yeah. He's like the Alex Jones of alternative health. So you got to have real studies. So that's FTC. FDA is about what's allowable to say. And I don't want to turn this into a legal lesson, and I'm not a lawyer, and you should always consult a lawyer. But just the quickie version is, in the 90s, the FDA, the head of the FDA wanted to outlaw supplements. So we got everybody to write to their senator and congressman, and people were outraged, so he backed off of it. But then Congress got together and wrote a law called the Dietary Supplement Health Education Act of 1994. And in that act, it says that you are allowed to sell supplements, but you are not allowed to make disease claims, because if you say you can cure a disease, then you are a drug, and then you have to go through FDA approval, which, by the way, costs about $100 million to get. So you can sell supplements without FDA approval, provided you are not making health claims, disease claims. So you can't say Alzheimer's. You'll notice nowhere in here do I say Alzheimer's, okay? You can make what they call structure function claims. That means you are allowed to talk about a structure of the body, and you are allowed to talk about a function of the body. So the brain is a structure of the body. The nerve cells are a structure of the body. Memory is a function of the body. Circulation is a function of the body. You guys get it?
Yeah.
Okay, what else, Melanie?
Parris has talked about how packaging, format, and delivery trumps copy. What do you predict will be the next hit medium for copy? Some say email is dying. Is it social media?
Well, social media is not the next thing. Social media has been around a long time. We spend a lot of money on social media. It's harder to make social media work today than it was 2 years ago. So that's not the next best thing. That's the old thing. You know, I don't know what the new thing is. I mean, I made a joke on one of the Copy Cup calls, you guys remember it, that I said, you know, maybe the next thing is going to be some guy as a hologram in your living room, right? A salesman, a virtual salesman, somebody, there's a hologram, a three-dimensional projected, you know, like Princess Leia in the beginning of Star Wars. And I said that, and then, you know, 18 months later, I'm at Genius Network annual event, and Kevin Harrington's there, and that's what he's selling now. He's selling, you can have your sales message in somebody's living room as a hologram.
Awesome.
Next. Oh, this one's from Brian Kurtz. Shall I read it aloud?
No, Brian Kurtz,
Okay.
absolutely not. No,
Okay.
go ahead, I'm kidding.
All right. He says, ask Parris if he wants to mention the infomercials we did with Arthur Johnson regarding the CTA at the end when everyone else had 3 CTAs and we had to show the full offer to avoid tire kickers.
Right. So the typical infomercial would have 3 or 4 calls to action, like little breaks within the infomercial. But Boardroom, at the time they were Boardroom, now they're Bottom Line Publishing, they decided to wait till the end, and it worked for them. And the answer to this is like the answer to every other question. You test, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to go to any seminars or anything. Just test stuff. So anyway, what else, Melanie?
Yes, this one's from Carl. Can you explain actions instead of abstractions for us, please?
I thought I did. I'm not sure what part you don't understand. It's like pictures, word pictures, things happening, not some concept. Like if I say health, that's an abstract concept. You can't picture what health is. your brain has to translate that into a word picture, right? Whereas if I say you'll be able to play with your grandkids and toss them up in the air, you can picture that, okay? So again, the way you take abstract concepts like health or whatever and change them into a word picture as you ask yourself, if I were watching a movie of this, what would I be seeing?
Andre says, what are some good strategies to get good testimonials?
You do a testimonial solicitation letter. You say, everybody who sends us one gets a free, whatever, free jar of goop or whatever the heck it is, a free bottle of a supplement. And then if you really want to ramp it up, you make a contest. Everybody who submits one gets a free thing, and then we'll have a grand prize for the best one.
All right, well, let's do one more before we get back
Also,
to
if you have reviews on your website, people where to place reviews. That's the easiest way. Nowadays, that's the way to do it. We hardly use the testimonial solicitation letters anymore because we get enough traffic to the website and enough people posting reviews. Amazon has trained people to do that. So you can get a lot of testimonials just doing that.
And one more, what do you feel about telling readers, in quotes, we want to change the way you buy, insert product here. Is this powerful or a flop?
You got to be careful of the word buy. There's a book called How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins, which I read, probably 35 years ago. And he talks about stuff like that. Don't say buy, say invest. Don't say sign the contract, say okay the agreement, right? Don't say, in copywriting we say, don't say learn, say discover. So you got to be careful about telling somebody they're going to buy something because people don't like to feel like they're buying. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're telling them that they're spending money and people would rather keep the money to themselves. Again, did I do the apothecary scale on the last call, or was that a previous call with just you guys?
That was just us.
Yeah.
I think Gary Benzavenga is okay with this because he said it publicly, not just on his DVDs and stuff. He's written about it, so it's fair for me to tell you. Gary Benzavenga would say, picture the scale with the two things, and on this one you put all the benefits, and on this one is the price. So you keep loading it with benefits till it's like the benefits far outweigh the price. And that's how you get people to part with their money. If somebody pays $29 for a book, Nicole, how much was that book worth to that person?
Depends what's in it.
I will ask the question again. If somebody paid $29 for a book, how much was that book worth?
$29?
Well, actually, your thinking was correct before. It's not worth $29. It's worth more than $29.
All right. Yes. Okay.
Otherwise, you would have just kept the money and you could keep the book, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, is that it for questions for now?
That's it for now. Let's keep rolling.
Let's keep going. Where were we on here? Oh, a discovery. Oh, we're down here somewhere.
We were into the cross had a simple way to boost NGF.
Thank you, Paul.
Whoop, too far.
Okay, right. They took 33, they shortlisted them, then they tested that, and then they came down to one that stood head and shoulders above the others. Head and shoulders, imagery. You could picture head and shoulders, right? Above. Yeah. What is this nutrient? It's an antioxidant called luteolin. People know what antioxidants are. We've been telling them for 35 years what they are. So by saying it's an antioxidant called luteolin, oh, okay, cool, I get it. Luteolin has been shown to not only boost NGF, but also improve memory and learning ability. And now we go into more studies. In one study, a group of mice was fed either a luteolin-rich diet or a controlled diet. Can you picture this? Can you picture mice? Yep. Can you picture them being fed stuff? After 4 weeks, the mice were put in a water maze. Can you picture that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They had to swim through the maze and find a hidden exit to get out of the maze. Can you picture that? Is there story appeal here?
Yes.
It's telling you what happened.
Absolutely.
It's like watching a movie, right? It's an action, not an abstraction. Result, the mice fed luteolin were able to exit the maze much faster than the control group. Now, somebody's going to ask you, so I'll save you the trouble. Parris, wouldn't it have been better to say they did it 5.8 seconds faster? Yes, it would be. The reason we didn't is because it probably was only a second faster or something like that. Okay? So again, you have to selectively decide which specifics you reveal and which ones you do not. And the way you do so is by asking yourself this question: does it help my case? Does it hurt my case? Or if it's neutral. So if it said that the mice in the experimental group got out of there 12 seconds faster, well, that sounds pretty damn impressive. That definitely helps my case. If it said 1 second faster, not so much. Okay? So when you say much faster, well, that's my opinion. It was much faster. That's called puffery. The government allows you to do that. Anytime you're saying something that's opinion or that's like it's something that can neither be proven nor disproven, it's just your opinion. Like when you say they were amazed or anything like that, that falls under puffery. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so always run stuff by your lawyer. But what was really surprising was the older mice on the Luti Island did even better than the younger mice. So again, we're adding that little punchline at the end, right? Mm-hmm. And they're thinking, because this is an older audience, so now they're putting themselves in, oh, I'm older, so maybe this will work better for me, right? Mm-hmm. Now, next crosshead: blocks inflammation and stops brain aging in its tracks. If you have memory problems, it could be due to inflammation. Inflammation could give you brain fog and cloudy thinking. Now, by the way, we ended one sentence with inflammation and we started the next one with inflammation. That's a good transition technique so that you have tighter transitions. You always want to have something from one sentence carrying through to the other sentence so that it serves like a thread, like to keep the reader oriented so you don't lose them, right? You spoon feed them one sentence to another, and you repeat things from one sentence to the next, so that they're always oriented and doesn't seem like it's out of left field. It doesn't seem jarring. Inflammation can give you brain fog and cloudy thinking. Ooh, I don't want that. It can disrupt your attention and make it harder for you to focus on a task. Ooh, I don't want that. And it could cause you to suddenly forget names or words you know. Ooh, I don't want that. But beyond the fact that I don't want that is that most of the people reading this have one of these things. We purposely did this to cast a wide net, to say that the things that they're experiencing and to say that inflammation can be what's causing it. Ergo, what does that do, April? Did we lose April?
No, I was replying to somebody in the chat.
Ah.
Sorry.
Okay. So, did you hear my question or no?
No, I did not.
Melanie, did you hear my question? No.
The chat's a black hole.
I heard it, Parris.
All right. Would you like to answer it, please?
Sure, I'll give it a shot. So as they're reading that, they're going to think, oh, this is for me.
Right. They're like, oh, inflammation, all these things that I'm experiencing, inflammation might be the cause. This thing stops it, blocks inflammation. This might finally be the answer I'm looking for, right? So this is an example of showing, not telling. You've heard this expression, show, don't tell. If I told you, this product could be the answer to your, this could be the answer to your problems. What are you thinking? Well, yeah, of course you're going to say that. You're trying to sell me something. I don't believe you, right? Instead of telling them, we show them. And they come to the conclusion themselves that this product might be the answer, right?
In Parris, is that a subtle way of building empathy with the reader as well?
Yeah. There's another technique. It's not your fault. Type in the chat box if you've heard that you should say it's not your fault in your copy.
I wonder if anybody has ever heard that. Yep, lots of yeses.
Okay, so that's all well and good. But an even better thing than telling them it's not your fault is showing it's not your fault. So instead of explicitly saying it's not your fault, you may want to say, hey, maybe you have obesity runs in your family and genetically you don't burn calories as fast as that bitch next door who's, 90 pounds. You know, and you do that. And so you're conveying it's not your fault without actually explicitly saying it. Anyway, I don't have a problem with saying it's not your fault, by the way, but I'm just pointing out that that would be another way of showing rather than telling. And in this case, I would have a problem if it was saying, oh, finally, we have the answer to your problems, because now it's just a self-serving statement. They're not going to believe you. So the good news is studies show, I'm over here now, luteolin can block inflammation and stop brain aging in its tracks. Have a look at these studies. In one study, scientists had a group of mice drink water that contained luteolin. They had another group of mice as a control. After 3 weeks, they injected the mice in both groups with a toxin which triggered inflammation in their brains. Result, the mice fed luteolin had much less inflammation than their hippocampus, the brain region where memories are formed and stored. Okay? Now, here's sentence, get them to grasp the advantage. This is astounding because very few nutrients are able to reach this part of the brain. And luteolin is one of them. Oh, cool, right? And maybe they're thinking, oh, maybe that's why the other stuff I'm taking doesn't work for me because it's not able to reach the brain, whereas this does. Maybe I should take this, right? In another study, scientists injected an inflammatory substance into the brains of a group of mice. This in turn destroyed their memory and learning ability. Destroyed is a great word, power word, right? Mm-hmm. Scientists then gave the mice luteolin. Result, they saw a huge improvement in the mice's learning and memory, in just 8 days, exclamation point. And the exclamation point there is a way to get people to grasp the advantage. In case you didn't know that 8 days is a very short period, which I'm assuming most people did, but just in case, we have the word just there, and we have the exclamation point there to drive home that, yeah, this is a big freaking deal. When I saw all the data on luteolin, I knew I had to get it to my patients and readers. See, so he's not just doing this to sell you something. He has a mission in life, right? So I worked with my friends at Advanced Bionutritionals to create a comprehensive memory formula that contains luteolin. It's called Advanced Memory Formula. By the way, who's this letter from? Type in the chat box.
There we go. Dr. Schallenberger, the doctor,
That's
the man with the great hair.
That's right. So I failed to point that out before. There's more than one form of proof. In addition to the combination of Nobel Prize winning breakthroughs, there's the fact that this is actually coming from a doctor. Here he is, right? He's got the stethoscope, the white coat, and we have the little credentials here that talks about where he went to medical school and what he did and all the stuff he's done. So there's proof there. Anyway, so he's talking to you, and it's a doctor talking to you, so it carries a lot of authority. So it said it gives you the right amount of luteolin to boost your NGF levels, keep your brain from shrinking, and protect your brain from inflammation. It's restating the benefits, right? But we didn't stop there. We also took advantage of 2 other Nobel Prize winning breakthroughs. And here we go, Nobel Prize breakthrough number 2, how to build a younger brain as you age. For decades, scientists believed it was impossible to build a younger brain. But that all changed when a neuroscientist named Dr. Eric Kandel proved that you can grow new brain cells and rebuild your brain no matter what your age. Dr. Kandel won the Nobel Prize for his groundbreaking research. Since then, scientists have shifted their focus from is it possible to how to grow new brain cells. This led them to another breakthrough discovery, the discovery of an essential compound the brain needs to grow new cells. What is this compound? It's called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDNF is a protein produced by the brain. It plays a vital role in the growing of new brain cells. Here's a study that shows how stunning BDNF is. And then again, it's word pictures. The scientists injected BDNF into brain cells in a petri dish. They couldn't believe their eyes when they saw what happened next. Again, a little puffery there. They saw that the brain cells miraculously began to sprout branches. Now, can you picture that? Mhm.
Yep. Mhm.
These are the very branches the brain cells need to transmit signals and communicate with other cells. Get you to grasp the advantage, right? Tell you
Yeah.
why what I just told you is important. It's kind of cool that they sprouted branches, but it's also important because you need these branches to transmit and communicate with other cells. And now maybe you're thinking, all right, it's a frickin' petri dish, right? Some of the more skeptical people you're writing to might be like, okay, that's cool, but it doesn't really prove in it. So just as that occurs to you, we say, could this laboratory result apply in the real world to actual human beings? Well, scientists decided to find out, right? Again, open loop, scientists decided to find out. Seeds of curiosity. You got to keep reading to find out what the scientists did and what they found out. Then we have a crosshead for eye relief, makes you sharper and smarter. And then we go into the studies. In one study, scientists first gave a blood test to a group of volunteers to measure their BDNF levels. Can you picture that? Can you picture people getting a blood test?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. They then had the volunteers watch a rapid fire lineup of photos that showed the faces and names of people they didn't know. Can you picture that?
Yeah.
After a break, they asked the volunteers to recall the names they had just seen. Now, April, when you're reading this, what are you thinking?
What am I thinking next, or what am I picturing?
Like when you just heard that they made you watch a rapid fire thing and now they're going to test you, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking I wouldn't be able to remember any of that if it were me.
Shit, I'm going to flunk that test,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, after the test was completed, the scientists examined the results along with the data from the blood test. What they found was astonishing. There I go with one of those sentences that makes you keep reading. What they found was astonishing. They found that people who did the best by far on the memory test were the people with the highest levels of BDNF. In another study, scientists found that people with high levels of BDNF learned vocabulary words 20% faster. That's pretty cool. So how to boost your BDNF? By a whopping 143%. So 143% is a lot, but just in case they didn't know that, we're putting the word whopping there and we're adding the exclamation point to get them to grasp the advantage, to show, yes, this is a lot, this is important. Now, we know that coffee can boost mental performance. So this is what I call a head nod. You know, sometimes you'll write copy where you're saying something they already know, and you may say, as you may know, and they're nodding in agreement with you, right? Oh, yeah. So you got that little yes momentum. We know that coffee can boost mental performance, and we know that coffee is made from coffee beans, which are the seeds of coffee fruits. But a group of scientists wondered, could coffee fruits benefit our brain? To find the answer, they decided to conduct a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. You guys know what a double-blind, placebo-controlled study is? Type in the chat box. What do they say?
Lots of yeses. Lots and
Lots
lots
of
of yeses.
yeses. Is there anyone? Are there any no's?
No, I don't see any no's.
Okay.
Oh, sure. I see one no.
All right.
Okay,
So
here we go.
our audience knows what that is. You always want to make sure that when you say something to your audience, it's something that they know what you're talking about. If not, you have to explain it to them first, right? For the person who doesn't know what it is, that's a study where one group gets the real medication or supplement or whatever you're testing, and the other person gets a dummy pill that doesn't have anything in it. And the reason you do that is because you want to make sure that the pill's really working and it's just not there in their head, that they think they're getting better because they think they just got a pill. And when we say double blind, it means neither the person getting the pill nor the scientist giving the pill knows which one, who's getting what. It's coded and they don't know, and they don't find out till after the study when they rip open the envelope to see who got the real thing and who got the fake thing. And if the people who got the real thing did a lot better than the people who got the fake thing, now you know that it's a valid study and that the stuff really works. So first they had a group of people take a blood test. Then they gave them either a concentrate made from coffee fruit. Ooh, look at that, a typo. You could proof these things like a gazillion times and then you still find a typo months later. Made from coffee fruit or a placebo, it should say. After that, they had them retake the blood test every half hour. Result, They found that those who took the coffee fruit concentrate saw their BDNF levels skyrocket. Again, power word, graphs the advantage, by 143% within an hour. That's pretty damn amazing, right?
Hmm.
The scientists were blown away by the dramatic effect of the coffee fruit concentrate. They were so excited, they decided to patent this concentrate. It's called Neurofactor, and it's made from the whole fruit of the coffee plant, Coffea arabica. It's tasteless, odorless, and colorless, and it contains no caffeine. What are we doing there?
Overcoming objections.
Overcoming objections, right? Advanced memory formula gives you 100 milligrams of Neurofactor, the same dose used in the studies, in case you were kind of thinking, I wonder if it's just the same stuff that they used.
Yeah.
In addition to Neurofactor, again, you're always anticipating every single possible objection, and you're answering them in the copy as it occurs to the reader. And the way you do that, do you remember what I said last week? Type in the chat box if you remember what I said last week about how to read people's minds and know when objections are occurring to them. What do we see in there, Melanie?
I don't see any responses yet. I'm seeing somebody says, write to someone you know.
Exactly. If you write to someone, a real human being who you know well and you care about, you'll pretty much know what they're going to say when you say something. So just as you're writing to that person, you'll say, oh, right now, Joe's going to ask me, what about this? What about this? What about this? And right now, I'm going to answer that. I'm going to bring it up and answer it. Nobel Prize winning breakthrough number 3. Why is my mouse not working?
Because your Dropbox is full.
Because my Dropbox is full. How can I get this thing cleaned up? There we go. All right. How a night dream led to a stunning discovery that supercharges your memory. And this is about, it was the night before Easter Saturday in 1921. See, who said before on a balmy summer night, whatever kind of thing? That's sort of like that here, right? So ideally, you won't use it, but it's okay every once in a while. We've already got them so deep into the copy. They're already engaged. If we're not like 110% perfect, it's not the end of the world, right? So,
And in this case, it's accurate. This story did happen the night before Easter on that particular date.
right.
It's not ye old random balmy Sunday. It's a specific date and time.
Right. We wanted to be specific about when it happened. And there's a reason we needed to put Easter in there because it had something to do with the story, if I remember correctly. A German scientist named Otto Lowy came up with an idea in his dream. When he got up the next morning, he was very excited about his idea, but to his horror, he couldn't remember what it was. How many of you have had that happen? He thought he had lost the idea for good, but that night he had the same dream again. It was about a new experiment for his research. This time, Otto got up immediately, went to his lab, and conducted the experiment like he did in his dream. This led to a discovery that completely changed the way, another typo, the way scientists thought about the workings of the brain. It was so profound, Otto won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1936. Okay? Today, we all know about this discovery. It's called acetylcholine. So a lot of them have heard of acetylcholine. So we say, as you may know, acetylcholine is the messenger. Some of them do, some of them don't. So we bring them all together by saying, as you may know. As you may know is a magic phrase. Because when we write, and you're writing to everybody, you're writing to people who are brand spanking new, you're writing to people who know more than their doctors, and you got to all bring them all together. So you got to tell what acetylcholine is to the new people who don't know what it is, but at the same time, you don't want to lose the knowledgeable people by telling them something they already know and they get bored and they lose attention. So you say, as you may know. And they're like, oh, yes, I do know. And they pat themselves on the back and feel good about themselves because they already knew it. But you didn't say, as you know. You said, as you may know. And now the newbie people don't feel bad for not knowing because as you may know. You guys got that?
Mm-hmm.
Anything in the chat box? Did they get that?
If you got it, type yes. Otherwise, we're going to feel lonesome over here. Okay, there we go.
All
We
right.
got it.
So as you may know, acetylcholine is the messenger that helps your brain cells communicate with each other. It helps you store memories and retrieve them quickly when you need them. It allows you to remember what you walked into a room to get, recall names with ease, remember what you need to buy at the grocery store. Again, the very things that are plaguing the audience. So they're reading this and recognizing themselves in it and saying, oh, wow, I should be taking acetylcholine if I'm not already. And then we tell them how if you notice that you get senior moments more often, it's a telltale sign of low acetylcholine. And then we go to how to boost it, right? And then we talk about that. And it's a special form. They can't just run out to the health food store and get any old acetyl. No, you got to get this special form. And because it starts doing this instantly, and that was shown in a placebo-controlled study. So again, lots of proof. Everything we do, it's all proof, and the proof is all in stories. And this, by the way, this is in your swipe file that I gave you, so you can read the whole thing at your leisure. I'm going to stop right now, but you'll see we have more ingredients, and then we go into the final ingredients, and then we go to the call to action and the guarantee, down to the last pill guarantee. And then this, usually we put this at the end. It's all about 9 ways we guarantee the quality of our supplements. And then you have the call to action, and then you have the 1 bottle, 3 bottle, 6 bottle grid, and so on and so forth. Any questions on this piece of copy? Because I'm going to do another one right after this.
We've got a backlog of questions. If you're willing to take some time now.
All right,
Yep.
let's hear 'em.
Okay. It says, earlier up in the copy, there was a section about the protein. Seeing how a lot of the science was quite dumbed down, how did you determine that the readers need to know this technical bit of information, and why was it chosen to be shared as an aside and not in the main copy?
Which part about what protein?
It says
Tau protein.
tau protein, T-A-U.
Oh, the tau proteins. Okay. You know, you have to make a judgment call. Maybe it was too much, but we know that tau proteins are a sign of Alzheimer's. And this was a way to sort of talk about it without saying Alzheimer's, because you're not allowed to say Alzheimer's. Now, maybe if somebody's a really stickler, they might say, you know what, that's not compliant either. You shouldn't say that either. There's always degrees of risk in your copy, and you talk to your attorney and they'll say, this one here is a red flag. Definitely don't do this. They'll come after you. This one, they usually let slide. So this one has a lower degree of risk and all that. So there's that part of that involved. But the reason we talked about tau proteins is because they mean you have Alzheimer's.
Next, in his famous berry trim ad, Halbert deliberately quoted medical stuff nobody's supposed to understand just to create credibility.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on doing that today, since you said you should always explain everything to the audience?
I think in small doses it's fine, but if you overdo it, you're going to lose people. So if you just have a little bit in there and people skip over it and they go, all right, and then they pick up with the next part that's easy, that's probably fine. I always like to err on the side of, you know, not losing anyone. But again, as the previous person pointed out, maybe the tau thing might lose people. I will say that, you know, we've done heat maps on this thing, and we have a ridiculously high number of people who make it all the way to the bottom.
Do you have to state the actual studies somewhere in your copy, legally speaking? For example, in the fine print at the bottom of the page, or do you just have to be able to prove you got the info from them if asked?
You should always cite your stuff so that your client can look it up and they can run it by their lawyers. Nobody ends up getting in trouble later. And it's not a bad idea to have it in the copy because it's a credibility booster. It's another form of proof, right? Mm. Here we go. We got nothing to hide. Here's the studies, right? And do people click on them to find the study? Some people, not a lot, but some do. So let them have at it. Now, I know this whole idea of you don't want people leaving your webpage, and I get that. But, you know, like everything else, you test, right? But yes, you should always have your backup anytime you submit copy to a client.
This one's from John. He says, what's a good way to find new mechanisms or causes that they've never heard before to old diseases in the health space? e.g. inflammation in this sales letter?
Got to research. It's work. I hate to break it to everybody, but it's work. See, but you know, I don't look at this as a project or an assignment. Okay? I look at this as an annuity that's going to keep paying me money for a long time. Ergo, I am willing to put in a lot of work up front and then sit on my ass and collect royalty checks afterwards.
Jonathan says, in quotes, stops brain aging in its tracks. Sounds like 100% effective. I would be asking myself, if this is true, why doesn't the nightly news open with this groundbreaking discovery?
Right. So that is an objection you will find when you are going to a general audience. Our audience has been indoctrinated over years and years and years to believe that the nightly news and the New York Times and Time Magazine, they're 20 years behind. And of course, they're not going to tell you stuff. And you're one of the cool kids because you get to be with us and you get to learn about stuff 20 years before everybody else. So that's the deal with that. As we go further and further into cold traffic to more general audiences that are very uninitiated, then yeah, probably it's a good idea to answer that objection in a copy somewhere.
Next
In the early days of this industry, we used to do that. Every piece used to answer that objection. Why haven't I heard this from my doctor? Well, the reason you haven't heard this from your doctor is because, you know, the drug companies, blah, 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 blah.
Pharma.
Yeah.
Leanne asks, is each little section gradualization, or are you just handling different problems with each section?
I think of gradualization more of when you start with something small and turn it into something big. So in this case, I wouldn't say I'm using gradualization. There's this stupid example I give, and everybody always makes fun of me for giving this example, but I just love the example. Type in the chat bar if you have ever watched the Blues Brothers movie. What do we see?
And some yeses. Yep, they're starting to come in now. Yep, a lot of people.
So remember what happens in the Blues Brothers movie. Jake and Elwood are in their car. They get pulled over by a cop for a broken taillight, and they get a ticket. And then later on, they do something else, and they get pulled over. And it escalates little by little by little. By the end of the movie, they're being chased by 60 police cars, tanks, helicopters, right? It's just crazy. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
And the reason the director and the editor could pull that off, number one, it's a comedy and you're not supposed to take it seriously. But number two, it was gradualization. It started with this little thing and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. My favorite real life example of gradualization is in the Cialdini book, Influence, where he talks about the prisoners of war in Korea, where the North Koreans brainwashed them. They took red-blooded American males in the armed services and they brainwashed them into becoming stark raving communists. And the way they did it was through gradualization. They said, hey, we're doing a little essay contest, and if you write the best essay, you win a pack of cigarettes. And all you have to do is write an essay about why America's not perfect. Surely you agree that it's not perfect, right? Nothing's perfect. Just write us an essay on why America's not perfect. And so they did it, and once they did that, they were down the slippery slope. And you could use gradualization to turn them into communists.
Jared says, you mentioned Alzheimer's earlier.
Yes.
In a supplement piece, do you have to stay totally away from things like Alzheimer's?
Totally.
Or can you say things like X ingredient in product has been shown to fight against Alzheimer's?
No, you can't mention any disease at all. If you do, you're a drug and you need to go before FDA approval. You cannot compare your product to drugs either. Because then they'll say, oh, you're comparing it to drug, ergo it is a drug, ergo you need to go through FDA approval. So you'll see these supplement companies where they say the herbal Viagra, right? And they're getting away with it, but really they're breaking the rules there. And if they get caught, they could get their whole business shut down. Now, most people who sell boner pills are not really, the most up and up companies, So they probably have all these offshore companies and they keep closing up and opening up and all that. They're selling garbage to people and all that. So they don't really give a shit. But if you're an ethical marketer who wants to stay in business, you got to be careful because the feds have an unlimited budget and you do not.
Andre asks, is there a way to use takeaway selling in copy? And if yes, how? And please don't say putting a time limit on the offer, as that is not real takeaway selling in my opinion.
Well,
Ooh.
yeah, there's lots of ways to do takeaway. You could say you qualify, there's just a lot of ways.
Okay. Would discussion of mice and animal testing put this demographic off because of the love of animals and the association of mice with a human medicine?
Right. You got to be careful with that stuff. Any study that's really grisly, I usually won't include it, or I'll conveniently leave out things. Like if they say, so you got to weigh that, right? These were really dramatic, and I think the drama of the studies outweighed any potential negative thing. But again, we could probably test that. What happens if we take this study out? Is it going to lower response?
Next, does the transition of using similar wording or exact apply to a list of bullet points?
No, but what you do want to do sometimes, and now are you talking bullet points or are you talking fascination bullets?
It's unclear.
So if you're talking bullet points, you might do the repetition technique. It makes you learn vocabulary words faster. It decreases the number of brain farts. It does this, it does that. So you're starting each one with it, and it creates a rhythm because of the repetition. Like Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech, right? I have a dream that, children will grow up not being judged by the color of their skin. I have a dream that Americans will, whatever it was, I don't remember what it was. It was a very powerful speech because he uses that repetition. And you could do that in bullet points. But if you're doing fascination bullets, no, they don't need to have transitions. They don't need to have repetition. They just need to sound good. And the way you know if they sound good is you read them out loud and you say, ooh, this one, these two for some reason don't sound good next to each other. What if I move this one up here? Oh, that one's better.
This one says, talking about graphics, what resource do you suggest to study?
All right, these graphics suck, by the way. They don't suck. I shouldn't be that hard, but there are things that we can improve, and we are going to improve them. I learned graphics from Ted Kikoler and Rob Davis and people like that. There are some books out there. The names are escaping me. If anybody has a good one, type it in the chat box.
All right, we'll give them a minute to.
There is a great book called Don't Make Me Think.
That is a good book.
Which is about user experience, right? The worst thing you can make anyone do on your website is make them think. Where am I supposed to go? How do I navigate this? You got to make things intuitive and, brain dead simple. What else we got there, Melanie?
Do you write stuff in sidebars because you feel it's important, but it may cause you to lose people?
So in direct mail, in a magalog, and a lot of these things started out as magalogs and then were converted to online. And now we do it the other way around. We start online and convert them to direct mail. In direct mail, if you have a magalog, you need the sidebars for eye relief, number one, because if it's 16 pages of all text, it looks too imposing and boring and nobody's going to read it. So you use them for eye relief, but the other reason you use them is so that you have multiple entry points for the copy. So if you look at the bottom line health piece that I discussed with David Garfinkel on his podcast, there was a table of contents with teaser bullets of what they're going to find inside. So that's a possible entry. There's the main headline on the front cover. So that's a possible entry. There's a back cover article. So that's a possible entry. And then there's sidebars, which are all possible entries. So if somebody gets something in the mail, right, they normally don't just start reading it. First, they want to see if it's worth their time. They start flipping through it. They're like, oh, look at this. This is interesting. And they read the sidebar. And then they're like, go ahead, and they read another side. well, you know what? I think this is worth my time. And now they start reading the whole article from the front page. So you want to put really good stuff in sidebars. You don't want to relegate the B-level stuff to the sidebars. Clayton taught me that.
Maurice wants to know, in a service industry, for example, carpet cleaning, how can you apply scientific or expert proof?
You look for, your trade association is going to have studies and tests on the different materials. The companies that are selling you the chemicals, they're going to have that kind of data on the stuff. So get that stuff from them. So that'll give you the scientific proof. What was the other proof he said?
Scientific or expert?
Well, if there's an expert in your industry, or if there's an expert, anyone who's an expert on carpet cleaning, your audience, you're talking about selling services to the public, right?
Yep.
So your audience isn't going to know that expert. So maybe that's not the best type of proof to use. Maybe you could have a celebrity or something, but that's not really an expert. That's more like, social proof or something. But there are other forms of proof, reason why explanation. Demonstration proof is the best proof there is, right? If you could show, if you have a video of this is what the carpet looked like before, then we do this, and this is what it looks like after, and then you have a split screen showing the photo of this before and this after, and you could see the stark difference. This one looks disgusting, and this one looks beautiful and clean, right?
Okay, next. What points or thoughts do you have about making a reader feel like you are talking just to them? Example, here is your ticket to a better future.
Yeah, you always want to make them sound like you're talking just to them. You don't do stuff like folks or you guys or anything like that. You say you. See right here. If you suffer from memory problems, then this is maybe the most exciting news you read this year. And then at the bottom, it's, in the call to action, it's going to talk about you a lot too. I mean, this one has less you in it than most of the stuff we do, but there's still you. When you're stressed, you become more forgetful, right? The you is like one of the most powerful words in copywriting.
What are your best tips for writing the first sentence?
Play around with different openings until you get the one you like best. And the short sentence should be short. It should be, clear. It should be high energy. It should not run counter to their existing beliefs, right? And it should make them want to keep reading. So if you look at that article that I'm asking you to hand copy 3 times, it's in one of the bonuses. Remember that, like the how to improve your writing overnight. I have examples of great opening sentences, and one of them was, John Smith was sitting in his kitchen when he heard his 11-year-old daughter scream. Right? That's right. How do you not keep reading after an opening sentence like that? Right.
Right. Besides PubMed, what are your go-to sites for doing research on the ingredients in a supplement?
PubMed is great. Google Scholar might be easier to use. I mean, it's pretty much the same stuff you're going to get, but it's a little more user-friendly. So scholar.google.com.
What do you do to get a read on the market to gauge if an idea will make for a strong copy package before you invest the time to write it?
Show it to people who are the target audience. Or you could test it, like you could test some traffic drivers or Google ads or something, but not Google ads so much because there's a lot of stuff they don't let you do. But I just, first of all, I have such a knowledge of the audience from doing this so long. But secondly, I'd show it to people. I show it to actual people who are prospects for the product. Like we talked about last week, Gary Helbert would go into Barney's Beanery and he would read the copy to people.
Do you recommend testing? Oh, you guys,
I answered that one.
Is that you?
I did it.
Stop touching the buttons. Okay.
I knew the answer. I already knew the answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're good to go on that one. Okay. How do you decide what order to put each section in?
Usually I like to start with the strongest stuff because you don't get a second chance to make a good first impression. So
how do you know what's strongest?
Again, it's part of its feel, part of its knowing what worked before. Remember last week when I said that, you know, you're like a chess grandmaster, you've memorized thousands of openings and defenses and counter moves and all that kind of stuff. So if you're a copywriter, you've memorized hundreds of split tests, what works, what doesn't, you know, and plus you talk to the audience, you show things to the audience, you show things to your spouse. We talked about that too, right?
Right.
And you get a feel for what's strongest, and you know, you show other copywriters maybe. And I arrange them from strongest to weakness, except I usually like the last one to be strong, so we end with a bang. So very often what I'll do is I'll put the strongest one first, the second strongest one last, and then I'll go in descending order from there, third, fourth, fifth, you know. From
Next,
the second one will
what's your go-to advice for creating a badass order form?
you know, you got to test these things, but, you know, restating the benefit in the order form. Never, ever do an order form where people have to go left to right to fill out stuff online, right? So, like if we go here, right? And now I'm going to regret that I did this because I think they asked for your email or whatever. And of course, my freaking mouse isn't even working. Oh, here we go. See, that made me think, so that's not good.
No good, no thinking.
All right, proceed to checkout. Yeah, see how everything's top to bottom. The first name, then last name, then company, then street address. It's not first name, last name, it's not going left to right, right?
Right.
See, and here we go, I'm about to leave. Wait, before you go. Sorry, I left. So there we are. That's that one.
We've got 10 more, but why don't we move on and do some more copy stuff and come back to these in a bit.
All right. So in your swipe files that I sent you, there's a 10-year control for a newsletter that was called Real Cures. And I show you the different iterations. The guts of the copy are the same for 10 years, but we kept testing new headlines and leads to keep it going. So this was the original version. It was an envelope. It was a number 10 envelope, and inside was a letter with a Gary Halbert style grabber, a Band-Aid. As you can see, I have attached a Band-Aid to the top of this letter. Why have I done this? 2 reasons. I have something very important to tell you, and I want to make sure I got it. And I also thought a Band-Aid would be a great way to make the following point. When it comes to your health, most herbal remedies and nutritional supplements are nothing more than Band-Aid solutions. Now, don't get me wrong. I like supplements. I prescribe them to my patients. I take them myself, and I prefer them to drugs. But like drugs, most supplements merely reduce your symptoms. They do nothing to address the root cause of them. Right? And there we go. We're off and running. We got them into the copy, and that's the point. Right? This is for selling a newsletter. So when you're selling a newsletter, you can talk about diseases. When you're selling an information product, you can talk about diseases all you want, as long as what you're saying is true. Because you're protected by the First Amendment, freedom of the press. So that was the first one, and it ran out of steam. So then we converted it to a book-a-log, a little book, right? Table of contents, it's all the same copy. We took we had the first bit of, after the Band-Aid opening, we went into this, how to cure your arthritis permanently. And that was the lead off, and that was the lead premium special report. So we opened with that. Then the third version, we tested a red cover, and we got like a 22% lift or something. That's a much nicer cover than the other one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And studies show that red, people want to grab it and interact with it when it's red. If you go to the bookstore and you see a lot of best-selling books have red covers, red, orange, colors like that. Then after that, we tested the fake newsletter or issue log. Yes, one of you made a comment last week or question. Issue log? Yes, it's a thing. This is an issue log. So we did an Alzheimer's lead, and then we did this one, how to cure autoimmune diseases. This breakthrough works by resetting your immune system so it stops attacking your cells. Works for rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, polymyalgia, Sjogren's syndrome, and more. This one did not as good as the other ones, but it's still controlled for a little while. Then we got the Parkinson's lead. What if there was a cure for Parkinson's disease and no one heard about it? How a small group of renegade doctors is permanently reversing Parkinson's symptoms by balancing the brain's neurochemicals. And that one ran for a while. And then we ran it again, but with a different headline. Same thing. An open letter. Now we changed to Second Opinion because the editor for Second Opinion left, and we merged Real Cures and Second Opinion now and kept it as Second Opinion, and it's still Frank Schallenberger. But here's the headline on this one: an open letter to Michael J. Fox and anyone else suffering from Parkinson's disease. And this one actually did better than the one that I just showed you. Then after that, we did, there might be one or two in here that I'm missing, but this is the current control. Okay. So remember like what in 2016, when everybody died, when all the famous people died?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is anybody out there? Anyway,
No.
we sent this big honking tabloid, huge tabloid in your mailbox, and you open it and you see this, and then you see this. Killed by conventional medicine. These beloved celebrities would still be alive today if they knew what you're going to learn in the next 10 minutes. So those are the iterations. The one we're going to talk about today is this one, because out of all the ones we did, well, February 2011, all the ones we did, this is the one that mailed the longest. Now, type in the chat box, what kind of lead do you think? What do you think I led this with?
There we go. Story lead. Good.
You guys are good, huh? They catch on pretty quickly.
That's great. Yeah.
So,
Watch out, Cubs.
by the way, demonstration proof, right? This is what Steve drew when he was asked to draw a picture of a clock. Isn't that terrifying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is what he drew after 2 weeks. This is what he drew 37 days later. How powerful is that as a proof element?
It's huge.
Right? Now, look at the headline. How a doctor reversed her husband's Alzheimer's disease in 37 days. That's a very outlandish claim, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I claiming I'm going to reverse your Alzheimer's disease?
No.
No, I'm not. If I said that, you would say, yeah, right. You would toss it in the garbage. But I'm saying how a doctor did it, reversed her husband's Alzheimer's disease in 37 days. It's something that happened. So there's a case study proof and expert proof in the headline. And this demonstration proof, which again, demonstration proof is the strongest kind of proof there is, and that it's coming from a doctor who wrote this. All right. So proof stacking. And now the subhead, new breakthrough improves memory, restores brain function, and even revives dying brain cells. Wow, revives dying cells, okay? Remember I was telling you multiple points of entry. Here's your table of contents in this issue, right? Anyway, if you've ever known anyone with Alzheimer's disease, you know how heartbreaking it can be. Not only does it destroy a person's mental abilities and dignity, but it wipes out the person's very personality, leaving behind a mere shell of a human being. The body is there for you to see, but the person you know and love no longer exists. So I actually didn't lead with a story. I led with some empathy copy. Type in the chat box, does this resonate with you? Have you ever experienced something like this?
Okay, I'm starting to get a lot of yeses. Yep.
Right?
This
So
is working well.
everybody, we've all experienced it, right? It's pretty much captures what it's like, the heartbreak of knowing someone with Alzheimer's disease. That's exactly what happened to my colleague, Dr. Mary Newport, and her husband, Steve. Why did I say my colleague, Dr. Mary Newport? Because in this case, I'm talking about another doctor rather than him, and I don't want to totally give away the authority to the other doctor. I want to keep Frank in there somewhere. So he says they're colleagues. Now, did Frank and Mary work together or something? No, they never worked together. They never met until he talked to her, interviewed her for the SARC. Why is she his colleague? Because I said so.
Yeah.
As Mary describes it, I was watching my husband of 36 years fade away. Is that powerful, right?
Yeah.
So this is the technique of starting a story in the middle, right? You ever watch a movie where it opens with some guy like being chased by a tiger or some shit? Or maybe like James Bond's in a room and like all these other people are pointing guns at him. And then this doesn't happen in James Bond movies, but in another movie, like the hero of the story is in a room and all these guys have guns pointed at him and they're like, he's about to die. And then it just goes flashback to the beginning, right? So this is a tried and true story technique. Start in the middle, and media res, I think is what it calls, in the middle of the action. And then you go to the flashback to the beginning. Things didn't start out that way, of course. For most of Steve's life, he was known for his quick wit and sharp mind. He could do complicated math in his head, take apart computers and repair them, fix practically anything else without instruction. If he didn't have a tool to do something, he would invent one and make a usable prototype. He was also a voracious reader, and he loved kayaking, cooking, landscaping, and caring for his 2 daughters. Why did I put this in here? Type in the chat box. What is it saying?
It is dark out there. Okay, there we go. Making it a real person, relatable, connection.
Yeah. What else?
Visual.
Yes.
Making the audience empathize, empathy.
Yep. All true.
To show how brilliant he is or
there
was.
You go.
Set the baseline.
Show how brilliant he is, set the baseline. Very good. We want to create a contrast. We want to, the bigger the contrast, the more power and impact the story is going to have. So you want to take somebody who was like way up, like this guy was a freaking genius. He could take apart computers. He'd do complicated math. And now he's like a vegetable drooling. Like you want them to think like, you know, that excuse, it might work for other people, but not for me. Well, it might work for somebody with mild dementia, but my husband's like really bad. Well, we're going to paint the picture of really, really bad dementia. And we're going to contrast with somebody who is like uber genius level. And it's just going to show, it's going to make everything that much more powerful and give people hope, right? So indeed, on the day the couple's first daughter was born, Steve left his corporate job as an accountant so he could work from home. He took over as manager of Mary's medical practice, handling all the accounting and administrative tasks. The practice grew by leaps and bounds. Why did I put this in there? All right.
Again, it's baseline.
He was the manager of Mary's medical practice. Is that a positive or negative, or is it neutral?
Well, it shows the impact that his issues have on the entire family. It takes down not just the marriage, but the entire family business.
Well, it does. The other reason I put this here, that on the day their daughter was born, he left his corporate job. See, because there's a lot of old fuckers who read our newsletters who are very old-fashioned, chauvinistic. And if you tell them a guy worked for his wife, they think less of him. So I had to reframe it that he left his big time corporate job so he could work from home. And then after he did that, the practice grew by leaps and bounds. Now, that's puffery. I don't know how much the practice grew by. I could say, why did it grow by leaps and bounds? Because I said so, right? It's a subjective, it's not really saying anything, but it's giving the impression, right? So I just took a potential objection that the Neanderthals in the audience might have, because we got to say that he worked for her because that plays into the story. And I knew that as soon as I said that, some of the chauvinists in the audience would think less of him. And so I fixed that by doing it. So I think of like every little freaking thing that might hurt me, right? And I account for it. Now, sometimes I miss, like last week, I forgot to answer, there was an objection that I didn't anticipate. I didn't put it in the, but I try my damnedest to think of every single thing. Okay? So the practice grew by leaps and bounds. Tragedy strikes. But then Steve's memory started failing him. At first, it was little things like misplacing his keys and forgetting appointments. But then the lapses became more serious. He started making errors with the accounting and payroll, forgetting whether he had made the bank deposits, missing tax deadlines. A psychiatrist, see, so now we're painting this picture of the gradual deterioration, right? And we're doing it in story form. And anyone who's ever been with somebody with Alzheimer's identifies with this, because that's how it happens. It's not overnight. It's like the little things. And what else is this doing by mentioning these little things? What other seed is it planting in the person's, in the reader's mind?
Happening to them.
Oh shit, what if this is happening to me too?
Yep.
Because we all do this, right? Don't we all misplace keys?
Yeah.
Oh, forgot appointments. Oh shit.
Yep.
I made a mistake the other day. Next thing you know, all right? So we're adding fear, right? So, like the top emotional drivers, you guys have seen Bob Hacker where he says greed, fear, anger, envy, laziness, lust. You know what I'm talking about, right? Play to the 7 deadly sins pretty much. So fear is a great tool to have in your arsenal. A psychiatrist has diagnosed him as having depression and put him on antidepressant drugs and psychological counseling. But of course, that didn't help. Why do I have that in there, Nicole?
Let's see. Well, just that he knows he's got a problem and he's trying to get help.
Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is to bash the conventional medical establishment.
Ah.
Yeah.
So our audience is like, oh, we're better than they are. And, there's always the need to feel superior to others. And so we bash the conventional medical establishment, but I'm not doing it overtly. Again, I'm showing rather than telling. Right?
Yeah.
They've heard a million times this whole business of, oh, we're doing this. So I don't tell them, I show them. I illustrate it through the story. Of course, that didn't help. Steve's memory continued to get worse. He started getting lost while trying to drive home. He couldn't even remember how to turn on the car's windshield wiper. By now, it was clear that Steve had dementia. Mary wrote in her journal, "It has been a nightmare to watch his decline. Every night we hold each other before we go to sleep, and I wonder how many more times we will go through this." So again, very emotionally laden stuff, right? And Mary took Steve to a neurologist who put him on the drugs Aricept, Namenda, and Exelon. But still, Steve continued to worsen. He spent his days walking around the house confused, wearing only one shoe. He couldn't remember how to use a spoon or how to get water out of the refrigerator. So everything here, it's all word pictures for the most part, right? You could picture somebody getting lost. You could picture somebody not knowing how to turn the windshield wiper on. You could picture somebody not knowing how to use a spoon. You could picture him walking around the house confused, wearing only one shoe, right?
Yep.
At a family reunion, can you picture a family reunion?
Sure.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. No longer recognized close relatives. He even forgot that he had fathered his oldest daughter. Is art heartbreaking or what?
Well, that also links back to the he left his job when his first daughter was born.
He left his job so he could be with his little girl, and now he doesn't even remember he has one. Mary did everything she could for Steve. She cooked for him, gave him his medications, helped him get dressed. Okay, what I didn't write here is that she wiped his ass, but you're kind of getting that that's probably what's going on here, right? You don't have to say it. She also tried to enroll him in studies on new experimental drugs. But Steve scored so low on the mental exam that he didn't qualify for the studies. Again, we're just painting the most dire thing we can, right? When Steve took the mini mental status exam, MMSR, he scored a 14 out of 30, which indicates severe dementia. And when he took a test where he was asked to draw a clock from memory, this is what he drew. And that's not all. When Steve took a genetic test for Alzheimer's, he tested positive for the leading Alzheimer's gene. Why did I put that in there? Because this is Alzheimer's, this is proof. Not only does he have the symptoms, but he tested positive for the, so you can't say, oh, maybe it worked for him because he has regular dementia, but I have Alzheimer's. No, he had Alzheimer's. And when he had an MRI of his brain, the MRI found a shrinking of the hippocampus and damage to his frontal parietal lobes. So this is freaking damage, okay? The MRI proved it. Seeing is believing, okay? Now what do I do here? Still, there were brief moments when the old Steve would make a brief appearance. Sometimes he'd be able to hold a coherent conversation. Sometimes he would even say something clever or crack a joke. One day, Mary asked if a certain phone call came in, and he said no. 2 days later, he remembered the call and what the caller said. Why is that in there, April?
Well, it's giving them some hope.
Yeah, that's one
So
reason. It's another reason.
It's not a lost cause.
What's another reason it's in there? Drew, what do you think?
Man, that's a great question.
Now, let's ask some of the other peeps. Type in the chat box. Why do you think this is in there?
This person says transition. Another one says hope. There's still something left to repair. It would lead his wife to investigate the contrast of good days versus bad ways.
Yeah.
Walking the line of too much gloom and doom.
Yeah.
So relatable, makes it even sadder, makes the story believable.
Yeah.
Contrast, getting him back as possible. It's a common experience for people with Alzheimer's.
It's a common experience with people. So if you have a relative with Alzheimer's, you've had this happen to you. Mm-hmm. You get this sense of false hope. Oh my God, mommy was able to remember blah, 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 blah. And you get all excited. And then the next day she's back to not remembering shit. So this is empathy copy. It's mirroring the experience of the reader. Mm-hmm. When you have a story in your copy, the hero of the story is the proxy for your reader. In Mary's words, it was strange, quote, strange to have no short-term memory, and yet the information was filed somewhere in his brain. I knew he was locked up in there somewhere. If only there was a key to open up the areas of his brain that he didn't have access to. Little did Mary know that she would soon find that very key. Ooh, here we go, a little foreshadowing. And then that's the transition into what happened. One day, Mary came across research on an experimental drug called ketosine. She learned that in a study of Alzheimer's patients, this drug brought about improvement in half the people who took it. Mary was astonished by these findings. As she put it, quote, most drugs talk about slowing the progression of the disease, but you never hear the word improvement. Right then, I knew I had to find out more. Mary did research on the internet and came across a patent application for the drug. Now, here's what's going on here. Whenever you write a story, you have this problem that's trying to be solved. You have this goal, right? The protagonist has to have a goal. Just like in any movie, any novel, right? The goal in this case is to cure Steve, right? So you have this protagonist with a goal, and you keep having things, unanswered questions laying in front of the reader so that they'll keep reading, right? So if you look at the way I write these patient stories, I do it two ways, one of two ways. One way is Joe came into my office, he was on death's doorstep, blah, blah, blah. I gave him this amazing treatment, and then he got better, and now he's dancing the Irish jig with Parris, right? And so what's the unanswered question there, Drew?
How did you do it? What did you prescribe?
Right? Yeah. So that's the part I left out. I told you Joe's story. I told you the result, but you're still reading because you want to find out how it happened because you want it to happen to you because he's a proxy for you. He's having the same problem you had, right? So that's one form. The other form is where I tell them the problem, but I don't reveal the ending. And instead, I take a detour into a discovery story. So that's what I did here. So you could do it either way, depending on the circumstances. In this case, there was a very interesting discovery story. So in this case, you keep reading because you want to know what happened to Steve. In the other case, you know what happened to Steve or whoever, Joe, whatever the guy's name is, but you want to know how it happened. In this case, we're going to tell you a discovery story of how it happened, but you're still waiting to find out how it turns out at the end. Okay? So one day, Mary came across the experimental drug. She was astonished. She did research on the internet and came across a patent application for the drug. The application included a description of how the drug works and a list of the drug's ingredients. Much to Mary's surprise, the main ingredient in the drug was medium chain triglycerides, MCTs, derived from coconuts. Now, this is all, everybody knows this stuff now, right? But when I wrote this in 2011, this was all brand new. Nobody had heard of any of this stuff. Nobody had heard about the ketogenic diet. Frank Schellenberger was giving the ketogenic diet to his patients like 15 years ago before anybody heard of it. Where are my MCTs? Could the solution to Alzheimer's be as simple as taking MCT oils? What am I doing there, April?
Well, so by asking it as a question, it seems like it's kind of an unbelievable thing. Like, could coconut oil really cure something like Alzheimer's? So you're framing it as a question.
Yeah, I'm acknowledging that this is unbelievable. I'm saying, could the solution to Alzheimer's really be as simple as taking MCT oils? Mary decided she had nothing to lose. So what are you thinking when you read this? Oh yeah, I have nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Again, Mary is a proxy for you. Steve is a proxy for your loved one who has Alzheimer's. Or if you think you're losing your marbles, Steve's a proxy for you, right? So when I say something about Mary, your brain thinks, oh, that something is about me. Mary had nothing to lose. Oh yeah, I have nothing to lose. I should do this. I should try this. So she went to the health food store and bought some coconut oil. The next morning, she mixed it in Steve's oatmeal and fed it to him. She then drove him to an appointment where he was scheduled to retake the MMSR exam. As soon as they got to the appointment, Steve was whisked away to the exam room. Do you guys know the difference between active voice and passive voice? Type in the chat bar.
Lots of yeses.
Okay, so almost always you want to use active voice, which means you want to have a doer in the sentence. You don't want to say when your application is received, you say when we receive your application. You don't want to say a vote was taken, you want to say we took a vote. So normally you want to say Mary did this, Joe did that, Steve did that. In this instance, I used passive voice. Steve was whisked away to the exam room. Why did I use passive voice, Russ?
Because you wanted to give the feeling that he was helpless.
That's right. When you use passive voice, the person has no agency. They're a victim of circumstances. They're not the doer. So I'm conveying that here. He was whisked away. When he came back, Steve told Mary that he was unhappy with his performance. So Mary pulled aside the research coordinator and asked how Steve did. The coordinator looked at Mary and said, "Didn't he tell you? He scored an 18. The last time Steve had taken the test, he'd score a 14 out of 30. Yet here he was scoring an 18. That's an improvement of 28%. What am I doing there, Drew?
Sorry, I got lost in the chat there.
It's a black hole, I tell you.
Yeah, you got to turn it off, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to turn it off? I don't even see
Russ.
it.
No, you.
Oh, Russ.
You're helping them grasp the advantage.
Yeah.
Grasp the advantage. Thank you, Paul. But that's not all. Within a few, that's typical copywriting. That's the transition of the last resort. We always want to have transitions between our sentences. And when we can't think of a better one, you could do the old standbys like, but that's not all, and those kind of things. Within a few days, Steve told Mary that he felt, quote, the light switch came back on and the fog lifted. Could this dramatic improvement be due to the coconut oil? Again, April, why am I having that as a question?
Because they still may have doubts that that's really the reason.
Acknowledging that it's unbelievable. Amazingly, the answer is yes. I'm acknowledging that it's amazing that this might be the case, but amazingly, the answer is yes, and here's why. So that's a very important phrase. You guys know about the Cialdini with the copy experiment, the people want to make photocopies?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So for those of you on the call who don't know, they did a study where a guy goes up to, there's a line waiting to make copies at the copy machine at the university library, and somebody goes, hey, can I cut the line? Everybody's like, buzz off, go to, wait till the end of the line. The second version of the experiment, the guy comes and goes, excuse me, can I cut the line because I'm in a hurry? People said yes. The third version of the experiment, guy said, can I cut the line because I want to make copies? People said yes. So the magic was in the word because. So we want to use the word because in our copy, and we want to know that here, we want to use here's why, because here's why is a synonym for because.
Yeah.
Right? Brain process that and says, oh, that means this is legit because it has a because in it. How it works. Coconut oil and other MCTs increase your body's production of compounds called ketones. Again, nobody knew what ketones were when we wrote this. You may have heard of ketones if you've ever been on the Atkins diet. So that's like the only people who would have heard of ketones were people who had tried the Atkins diet back then. Quite simply, ketones are compounds that are created when body fat is broken down for energy. Is that easy to understand?
Yep.
Yep.
When your body is starved of carbs, it starts burning your fat stores to create energy. That's why, again, there's the that's why. That's why people on low carb diets lose weight. It's also why people on low carb diets produce more ketones. Is that easy to understand?
Yes.
Why is this important? Well, it turns out that ketones are a powerful fuel for the brain, especially when the brain is injured or impaired. For example, scientists have known for years that one of the best ways to stop seizures is to put a patient on a low-carb, high-fat diet. Normally, brain cells prefer to get their fuel from glucose, but impaired brain cells, such as cells that are causing seizures, cannot metabolize glucose well. So we're taking something that they may have already heard of, because this was out there, and we're using that to kind of piggyback on that to apply it to what we're talking about now. Brain cells that are impaired cannot metabolize glucose well. They need another source of fuel, and that source is ketones, right? So, oh, okay, Steve's brain cells were impaired. It's starting to make sense now, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason why explanation. Start with the story, segue into the reason why explanation. One study, and now we go into the hard facts, right? Well, Mary didn't know this at the time, but there are over 20 different studies on the effect of ketones on the brain. These studies are published in obscure journals that most doctors don't read. Nonetheless, the findings of the studies are important. And then I go, one study found this, another study found that, and still another study found that. You'll see me do that a lot. When I have multiple studies, I'll have them as bullet points. One study found this, another found that, still another found that. And you like to do three. You know the rule of threes, right? There's a good rhythm when you do things in groups of threes. I've been researching ketones for years, and I've been using them in my own medical practice. Why did we say this?
Dr. Schellenberger is really pioneering. He's quite the authority.
Right. We're taking back the authority. We don't want to give Mary too much of the authority because, after all, in the end, it's about Dr. Schellenberger that you're going to buy his newsletter.
Yeah.
So we say Mary didn't know this at the time. We do that for two reasons. Number one, because it's an interesting for the story. She didn't know it at the time. But the other reason we do it is Frank knew this stuff because he's on top of everything. Right?
But also Mary's a doctor.
Right.
And she didn't know this. So that, again, is the authority back to him.
And also it answers the objection of why hasn't my doctor told me about this?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Mary was a doctor. She didn't know about it. They're obscure journals that most doctors don't read.
Yeah.
I've been researching ketones for years, and I've been using them in my own medical practice. Whenever I put my Alzheimer's patients on a ketone-producing diet, they always improve. However, the improvement is usually modest. It wasn't until I spoke to Mary that I realized that I could get a much stronger effect by giving my patients MCT oils. You see, it turns out that when you add MCT oils to a low-carb diet, the body is absolutely flooded with ketones. Good visual there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Power words. This results in an amazing improvement in brain function. Back to our story, right? So we did here's the problem, here's what's happening. We did a little detour of the side story. You're waiting to hear what happens to Steve, and now I'm going to tell you what happens to Steve. Mary continued to feed Steve coconut oil, and he continued to improve. 2 weeks after Mary asked him to, 2 weeks after Steve began taking coconut oil, Mary asked him to draw another clock. This is what he drew. And about 3 weeks after that, on day 37, she asked him to draw a clock again. He drew this. But that's not all. Just 2 months after Steve began taking coconut oil, Mary wrote the following, quote, "It has been 60 days since he started taking coconut oil. He walks into the kitchen every morning, alert and happy, talkative, making jokes. His gait, parentheses, his ability to walk with coordination, is still a little weird." Why are we saying that in there, Pauline?
I was in the chat, sorry.
Oh,
You don't want it to seem too true. Some believability.
Believability anyway.
Hold on. Yeah, it is believable.
Believable.
Yes.
Yeah.
His tremor is no longer very noticeable. He's able to concentrate on things that he wants to do around the house and in the yard and stay on task. Whereas before coconut oil, he was easily distracted and rarely accomplished anything unless I supervised him directly.
I need some coconut oil to keep me in the call, not on the chat. I'll take some now.
You need some Adderall is what you need.
Okay.
I spoke to Dr. Mary Newport just recently. Not only is Steve's gait totally back to normal, but he now jogs daily. His tremor is completely gone, and he has also gone back to being an avid reader. He recently relayed the details of 2 articles in Scientific American. Where am I? So again, we're giving examples, we're giving specifics, we're telling a story, right? He jogs daily, you can picture him jogging, right? His memory is also dramatically improved. He often brings up events that happened days or weeks earlier. He recognizes his relatives again. Where am I? And has conversations with them. He is back to doing the yard work at the house, and he has started doing volunteer work at the local hospital. Mary and I are convinced, he brought them back together, Mary and I, he's bringing himself back into it, right? Why do I keep losing my spot here? Mary and I are convinced that these changes are due to the coconut oil. Why? Because anytime Steve misses a dose, his Alzheimer's symptoms immediately start to return. According to Mary, Steve missed getting his morning oil on 2 occasions. Once because he had a fasting blood test, and the other time because he was traveling. In both instances, he became dazed and confused with full-blown tremors. And in both instances, he got back to normal after taking the coconut oil. Pretty dramatic, right? Now, what are you thinking? I'm wondering if I should take coconut oil. And right then we say, can coconut oil work for you or a loved one? The odds are good that it can. Not everyone will benefit to the same degree that Steve did. Whoops. But I will tell you this, in my experience, there will always be some degree of improvement. That's why I want to send you a new special report. And then we get into the special report. And the special report tells them a whole bunch of other stuff about Alzheimer's and memory and all that. But we use this to sell the special report because it's the most dramatic story we have. And then after the special report, we go into the newsletter and see information you won't find anywhere else. And then after that, we go into the next special report. In the next section, we got an Alzheimer's, arthritis section. We have all these different cures for everything. And if you go to the order form, you'll see that there's, look at all the special reports they give us, 17 of them. If they do a 2-year subscription, if they do a 1-year subscription, they only get 8, but still, right? And we do copy blocks on each report, and they get successively shorter as the copy goes along. In the beginning, we're doing more reveal and less T's, and at the end, they're almost all T's. And we have bullets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much in here, and that's why this thing, in one way or another, has mailed for 11 years.
Hey, Parris.
Yes.
Why do we get shorter and more teasing as the promotion carries on?
Well, the purpose to sell the purpose of this thing is to get people to buy it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the only reason we reveal at all, I mean, if I could do a promotion that was all teas, I would. And that's what we used to do back in the old days, right? Go look at the direct mail in the 1960s. There was precious little revealing of anything going on, right?
Yeah.
The reason we reveal stuff is because it's demonstration proof. What did I say a moment ago? Demonstration is the best form of proof. We are demonstrating the product in action. We are showing what you read in the newsletter. We are revealing things. And you go, wow, that's amazing. And then when we have all the bullets, they're like, holy crap, look at all the stuff they revealed to me for free without getting a subscription. Imagine what I'm going to learn in the actual newsletter. And we have all these great bullets, right? Why you should never rely on a bone density test to check for osteoporosis. Here's a cheaper, more sensitive test that's available at home. The popular food that makes cancer cells grow like crazy. Avoid this at all costs, right? All these kind of stuff. And you're like, wow, I've got to know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
How to remove skin cancers without laser surgery or scars, you know, all this stuff, right? And there's T's in here. So at the end, it's all T's. And the reason we do the copy blocks shorter and shorter is because it creates the illusion of speed and momentum. So they start down that slippery slide that is our sales copy. What am I doing there? It's a metaphor. And the more they go down, the faster and faster it is, so that by the time they're at the end, they just can't stop. Then they just whip out their credit card and buy the damn thing, right?
Yeah.
Right? So there
Yes.
Any questions on this?
We have several questions on this.
Okay.
The first one, how do you teach your cubs to talk subtly and indirectly to the schemas? Any hacks? When I first read this question, I thought it said, how do you teach your cubs to talk subtly and indirectly? That struck me as really funny.
Yeah.
The real question is,
They don't need any help learning how to talk subtly and
we are
indirectly.
both subtle and indirect. Anyway, how do you teach your cubs to talk to the schemas without being overbearing is what she's trying to say.
I haven't really done that yet. You know, it's I wish I could answer that in 5 minutes, but it's not. It's like a really long thing, and it takes a lot of practice and all that. So, sorry.
In your interview with Kevin, you gave an example of doing market sophistication and awareness for coming up with a headline. Can you share another example of combining these two concepts for a headline?
Well, let's look at this one. Am I the first person to ever promise Alzheimer's solution?
No.
No, so I had to come up with a mechanism. In this case, it was the story of this doctor. By the way, he never wrote about this in the newsletter. One day, my wife at the time read an article about that Mary Newport wrote, and she showed it to me, and she said, well, you should have Frank write about this. So I'm reading, I go, yeah, cool. So I sent it to Frank, and I go, what do you think? He goes, oh, yeah, totally. This is, you know. So he called Mary Newport, he interviewed her, he got back to me with his notes. I took his notes, I took article I had read, like 4 different articles, and I used them to cut and paste things. I took quotes that she had, and I put them in the right place. So, you know, and I created this out of all the source materials. So anyway, that speaks to sophistication, awareness. Do they know that they don't want Alzheimer's? Yes.
Mm.
So it's stage 3 awareness. They're problem aware, right? Are they aware that there's a thing called real cures? Maybe not. So we don't have real cures in our headline. The only reason we have it at all up here is because we are masquerading as a newsletter. They don't know that this is a direct mail piece selling them something. They think they're getting a newsletter in their mailbox.
Yeah.
Newsletters have a masthead on top, ergo we put a masthead on top. Newsletters have a date over there, ergo we put a date, right? Bookalogs, the other one looks like a book. It didn't say real cures or second opinion anywhere on the book because books don't say that on them. And we don't mention it in the headline because you only use your product name in the headline if it's stage 1 or stage 2 awareness. So there would be an example. What else?
This is referring to Mary's story. Are these quotes actual quotes or just based on the information gleaned?
Nope, you don't make up quotes unless the person gives you permission. You say, hey, Frank, can I write this in my own words? And you sign off on it. Was this something you would say? Yes, I would say it. Okay, then it's fine. But otherwise, you never, ever, ever make shit up. Okay? These were real articles that Mary wrote, and I took her quotes verbatim and put them in. And by the way, sometimes I only use quotes when they're really good. Sometimes I'll have writers, and you guys have fallen into this trap. They'll quote those scientists from the study, and the quote sucks. And I'm like, why are you saying a quote that sucks? Right? You can say it better than that person. Say it the way you would say it. But in this case, Mary's stuff was very powerful. You know, I was watching my husband of 36 years fade away. Where's the part where we would every night we hold each other before we go to sleep, and I wonder how many more times we get to do this. Oh my God, it's heartbreaking, right? What's the next question?
When do you know the copy editing is good enough to start the first real test?
It's a good question. You know, if you're not careful, you could end up with David Deutsch disease.
Oh.
A 12 draft tinkering with it. You know, David and I are both on that sort of perfectionistic scale, so we have to sort of let things go. I don't know. I just have a feeling, you know, like if I'm looking at it and going, it doesn't suck, then I know, you know, we're ready to test it. I think that's what it is. My first draft, I'll look at it, I go, wow, this sucks, and I'll keep fixing it. And as I told you guys, my method, right? When I sit down, like Ernest Hemingway says, never end a day's session at the end of a chapter, right? Always end in the middle so that the next day you have something in the middle to come back to and start reading and editing to warm up your brain, right? So like if I ended the day's work here and then I just started the next day with the arthritis thing, you know, I'm starting cold. Whereas if I start the next day by reading copy I've already written, and I start tinkering with that, and then I go to the next one, and it ends up that the copy is in different stages of rewrites. The earlier parts, they're pretty much done. I've been through them 3-4 times. The middle parts, I'm still tinkering with. The last parts are still rough copy. And just basically, I look at something that I did the day before, and if I think it sucks, I fixed it. If I don't think it sucks, then it's good to go. And then when I'm up to the point where I look at the whole copy and don't think it sucks, then it's good to go. But, you know, I have very high standards for non-suckiness. So, you know.
Oh, boy. Okay. When you mention Alzheimer's as part of the studies, but not mention it directly as something which will fix it in the SUPP supplement that you are selling. And
all right, supplements are a different story. You cannot talk about diseases with supplements. We are not selling a supplement here. We are selling a newsletter. Ergo, we can talk about anything we want as long as what we say is true.
Great. You mentioned incentivizing testimonials, but I thought the FTC didn't like that.
Right. So nowadays it's different. You know, you got to say results. It used to be you could get away with results not typical. Now you have to say what the typical result is. So it's a whole, you know, shit show. But, you know, you got to talk to your lawyer about that stuff.
Where do you recommend to test health to cold traffic? Facebook's perhaps.
Yeah, Facebook works. What are you selling? Look, here's the thing about health, okay? Health and financial are universal things, right? So in the old days, when we did just direct mail, there was no Facebook and lookalike audience and all this amazing targeting capability. We still found ways to target pretty tightly. Brian Kurtz can give you an entire dissertation on that stuff. But I'll tell you the short, quickie version is you have the core mailing lists that always work for you, right? That you know that anything that's halfway decent is going to work to these lists, because either the lists that are closest to your audience, the greatest affinity, they've bought something similar to what you're selling, right? So you'd have like 5 of those lists and you do tests. Doesn't do well to those, well, you know you're dead in the water. No reason to proceed any further. But if they work to those, now you can expand to the secondary lists. So you have the list that anything works to. Then you have the list that'll only work for you if you have a good promotion. Then you have the list that'll only work if you have a blockbuster promotion. And then if you have a super duper duper blockbuster, you can make almost any list work, because health is a universal thing that people want. So if you have a promotion that's strong enough, you could mail it to, like, you know, when I did work with Rodale, there's a thing in your swipe file that I sent you for the herbal drugstore that mailed to 40 million names. They were mailing that to clothing catalogs and getting it to work. Okay, so the same thing applies to email lists. If you got a promotion and it's an alternative health and you would send it to Natural Health Sherpa's list or some other health list, it's going to work. Well, it worked to that. Now let's try Newsmax, because there seems to be an affinity between Newsmax's list or Glenn Beck's list or one of those. And then if it works to that, we try another list that's further afield and so forth. Now with Facebook, you do it with targeting and with lookalike audiences. And it allows you to start very tightly targeted and then keep expanding out. And with Facebook, you're going to be testing different iterations of the ad. You're going to have like 200-300 ad sets on there, and you're going to get different people for different reasons. So we're gone are the days where you would write one ad and send it to 10 million people. Now you're doing lots of different versions of your ad. You're doing lots of different versions of the traffic drivers and all that kind of stuff. I hope I answered the question.
Yep. Next one. What's the difference between bullet points and fascination bullets? Ken McCarthy quoted Mel Martin as saying fascination can be swapped with bullets and that you ought to think of them that way.
Fascination can be what with bullets?
Can be swapped with bullets, that it's an interchangeable phrase. Is that true?
Interchangeable phrase, except that I see a lot of boring bullets, and to me a fascination is a bullet that's fascinating, not boring. So when I said bullet points, like if you're selling a bicycle for kids and it has the features, 18-inch rims, 2 handbrakes, that's a bullet point. That's not a benefit-driven thing, right? Whereas if you're selling an information product and you're teasing with what's going to be in there, right? Give your heart and cardiovascular system a workout without lifting a finger. Perfect if you're too tired or too weak to get off of the couch, right? That's a fascination bullet. Here's I have better ones in other promotions, but they're the bullets that make you like so curious, like you gotta know the answer. How doctors saved a woman's life by cutting off her hair. The common household item that made her deathly ill, and how you can avoid the same danger. Okay? How to get rid of your migraine headaches for good. Try this simple trick at home, costs nothing, and can eliminate them in as little as 4 to 6 weeks. Whatever. Those are fascination bullets. They're very curiosity provoking. They're very like, they really like, oh my God, how can that be? I gotta know the answer. And again, I have better ones. If you look at the bottom line stuff that I wrote, I have better bullets than those.
Next, this one's from Jonathan. You say, in quotes, if you're not satisfied, you can return it. Yet I know Clayton says, why put the negative outcome in their mind? Instead, put the positive one along the lines of quotes, you must be satisfied or else.
Yeah, it's probably better.
Okay, that answers that. Joshua says, what if you have stage 1 or 2 awareness, but a bundle of products? Would you avoid mentioning all the products by name in the headline and just talk about the benefit?
I don't understand what he means. He's trying to sell a bunch of products, like get bundled together in a kit or something.
Looks that way.
I'd have to see what he's talking about. The rule is you sell one product, right? You can sell a bundle if it's people who already know what you have. So, which I guess he said that is the case because of stage 1 awareness. So you're selling to your own customers. If something is stage 1, all you need to tell them what the deal is. Okay. Right? So if you're Dave Asprey and you have all your people buying Bulletproof coffee and you're bundling it, and you could say, buy the Bulletproof coffee variety pack for just $29.95. That's all you need to say.
This one says, where can I find FTC and FDA rules and restrictions so I won't get in trouble?
I think I have something somewhere about it. You could Google it, of course. You could go on their websites too. But the basic thing about FTC is it's got to be true. The basic thing about FDA is no disease claims, structure function claims. Don't compare your thing to a drug. One other thing that the feds have a problem with is the word proven. They get a real bug up their ass about that one. So you change that to shown, has been shown.
Okay. Carl says, if you were writing copy for a 2-day seminar that teaches business skills and you were unable to find a single USP in what the training does, how would you sell it? In parentheses, it says problem-aware audience that are earning $70,000 or above a year, and the price point on the item is $1,000.
Again, you're asking me to do your work for you. You're asking me like, here's my thing, write me a headline. You know, you got to research your audience. You got to go through the process. And if you don't, you're just not going to get better at it.
This one says, Parris, I'm dying to know, what do you do to increase mental clarity and focus? I find it so energy draining to concentrate when I'm writing copy, and you look like you can keep going for hours. Any brain-inducing supplements you recommend?
I do actually take advanced memory formula, the one that the promotion I just showed you that Shit Fun wrote. I take that every day. I also take some other stuff, you know, like for thyroid support, because the thyroid's very important for your brain and other things, you know. I have a little caffeine in the morning. I try to get a good night's sleep. Yeah.
Leanne says, is it hard for you to write fascination bullets because you know so much about the topic? In other words, it is harder to fascinate or surprise you. So how do you imagine what will be intriguing to someone without saying something that's commonplace to the reader?
Exactly. It's harder to fascinate me. So if you can fascinate me, you can fascinate anybody. So it kind of works to my advantage. I mean, it's harder to get done, but once I've got it done, I have a high degree of confidence that it's going to fascinate other people.
And this one is about the copy critiques for next week. Oscar wants to know, is it possible to know upfront if one's copy is going to be critiqued,
We're going to
even if it's on the same day?
And we're probably going to let those folks know because we may need to be able to give them mics so they can talk.
Great. And do we have an idea of when we might be able to tell them?
Sometime this week.
Okay, great. And that is everything.
Okay. Want to talk to you about something that we haven't talked about, which is these $39 products, right? The Second Opinion newsletter, the advanced memory formula. Do we make a profit selling those on the front end?
No.
No. We use them as the gateway, the gateway drug, right? And then what do? We sell them more of the same. We put them on continuity, right? And we try them to get more, to buy more expensive stuff. If you have a list of 10,000 people who have spent $40 on a product, how expensive of a product can you sell those 10,000 people? You guys know?
I've got someone who's asking, can you please ask the question again?
If you have 10,000 people who paid $40 for a product, how expensive of a product can you get those folks to buy? Can you get $40 buyers? Can you get any of them to buy $1,000 or $2,000 or $4,000 product?
Possibly.
You
Depends
can.
on the offer.
And how do you know how many of them are going to buy?
Seeing a lot of 80-20 rule in the chat box.
80-20 rule, that's correct. So 80% of your money comes for 20% of your people, right? So if you've got 10,000 people, you guys can see what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Paid $40. 20% of those people 2,000 of those people will pay 4 times. Why did I do that? Why did I X out of it? 4 times what that $40 is. So 40 times 4, you could get, if you have a $160 product, you could get, what did I say? 2,000 people to buy that $160 product, right?
Mhm.
Now, in actual fact, our entry level is $150 because that's what our average order people. Most people buy they gravitate towards the 3-bottle offer, so it averages out to about 150. But let's look at the $40 price point, right? So if you have a $160 product, you could get, what did we say? 20% of 10,000, you could get 2,000 people to buy it.
Yeah.
So if you do 160 times 4 again, how many people will spend 640? Well, it's the 2,000 times
20%, yeah.
Well, 400 people will buy 640. Now, let's do 640 times 4. If you have a $2,560 product, will people buy that? Yes, they will. What did we say? How many people will buy the 641?
400.
400.
400 times 0.2. You will get 80 people to spend $2,560. That's what we call a slack adjuster. Have you guys ever heard Dan Kennedy mention that? Type in Starbucks if you have, Colleen has. So you go to Starbucks and it's $7 coffees, but they also have the $2,000 espresso machine. So very interesting thing to know, is it not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we are now in the realms of not just copywriting, but marketing strategy and that kind of stuff. Okay. And I'm going to tell you who I learned a lot of this stuff from. You may ask me, what is the most lucrative piece of copy you ever wrote? And I showed you guys that there's a piece that made me over $1 million in royalties. There's other pieces that made me close to $1 million in royalties. But I would not consider either of those the most lucrative piece of copy I wrote. The most lucrative piece of copy I ever wrote was a piece of copy I wrote for J. Abraham back in 1990. I don't even know what it was, 94 or something, 95. And back then, I was charging a tiny fraction of what I charge now as a fee. And I got no royalties on that piece because what happened, it was going to be a J. Abraham newsletter. It was a joint venture between Jay and Phillips Publishing. And at the end, they pulled the plug and my thing never rolled out. I never made a penny in royalties. Why then do I consider it the most lucrative piece of copy I ever wrote? I'll tell you why. Because a week after I signed the contract to write this copy, the UPS man came with this huge box. It was like a 50-pound box. And I opened the box, tore it open, and inside was every course that Jay had ever done. Every audio course, every video, every manual. There were recordings, there were cassettes. That's how long it was, cassettes. It had all his thinking, his case studies and interviews. I mean, it's just amazing. Now, what do you do when you're hired to write copy for an information product?
You go through everything.
You go through everything. You read it, you reread it, you write bullets for it, you write fascinations, you write sidebars. You immerse yourself so deeply into that stuff that by the end, you know it inside and out. So by the time I had done writing that stuff, I knew J. Abraham's concepts inside and out. And I said, oh my God, I'm set for life. I never have to worry about money again. I can create money at will. I can walk into any business and show them how to double their sales. And so that's what I started doing. So I am known mostly as a copywriter, but only about 40% of my income comes from writing copy. The other 60% comes from consulting, i.e. getting paid to flap my limbs. And it's a beautiful gig. And I owe a lot of it to Jay. And so why am I telling you this? The reason I'm telling you this is because I was talking to Jay recently, and he heard about my cousin Daki, and he said, I want to do anything I can to help. So Jay made a very generous offer. And particularly good if you own your own business, or if you want to be a marketing consultant or are a marketing consultant. Jay is like crazy expensive if you want to hire him. Usually he takes a piece of the business, and if you're just doing straight consulting, his daily rate is $120,000 per day.
Oh my God.
$120,000 per day if you want to hire Jay to look at your business and consult with him and give you strategies and all that kind of stuff. Okay.
Bargain.
So if you say an 8-hour day, where's that calculator? Did I close it again? I'll do it on this calculator here.
It's down the bottom of your screen.
Where is it?
Next to your Zoom icon.
Ah,
There.
okay.
It's like 20 grand an hour.
$20,000 an hour. Okay. Here's what Jay is going to do. 2 hours of Jay for $5,000.
Woo.
And if a couple of you want to go halvesies, and do 2,500 each, and you get the 2 hours an hour each or whatever, he's fine with that. Okay. So I have a list of 600 people who paid $300 to donate to be on these webinars. That means 20% of them, or 120 people, are going to be willing to pay $1,200. That means 24 people are going to be willing to pay $4,800, or basically what Jay's offer is. So out of the 600 people on this list who donated to Taki and either attended the calls or are listening to the calls, you can expect that roughly 24 people would be willing to pay $5,000. Jay is limiting this to 3 people. That's 6 hours of his time. That's like almost $100,000 of his time. Okay.
Yeah.
If you are one of the 3 people, or if you want to go halvesies on it, and then it'd be, between 3 and 6 people, $5,000 for 2 hours of Jay time. You could talk about anything in your business. Any people are stuck and they go to Jay, and he immediately, within minutes, asking the right questions, zeroes in on how to unstick them. He's grown people by huge orders of magnitude, taken, kitchen table entrepreneurs and turned them into $100 million a year people. Now he works with billion-dollar companies on all this stuff. If you are interested, send me an email to copycubsecrets@gmail.com. It's the same email where you went to get your stuff. Do not go to the GoFundMe page. I repeat, do not go to the GoFundMe page and donate, because you may end up donating for nothing, because there's only 3 slots. So if you're interested, send me an email, include your phone number. I'll call you. The first 3 people who are qualified will get in. Okay? Any questions?
Are we eligible?
Yes, you are. So whoever's interested, I advise you to act quickly. First come, first serve. The first 3 people who qualify will get in. And that's it for now. Next week, we'll be doing critiques. So have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Parris.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
So long.
You guys.